Chapter 626. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say that there was no pop-up window to read for free. Fifth miss, don't worry. Just tell me. I'm just recording it and won't make things difficult for you. This can be considered as me investigating this matter for you. When Shichi remained silent behind the screen and said slowly in a low voice. In fact, he didn't believe it. It was just an official statement. As for how Xiao Wanru would behave in the future, it had nothing to do with him. When Shichi never thought that he was a soft-hearted person. After knowing his cousin's malice, he also acted very quickly and ruthlessly. He let people find that his second brother and his cousin met secretly in the rockery, and they were very intimate. His parents were very angry now. His mother wanted his second brother to marry his cousin, but his father wanted such an unruly woman to not be his legal wife. It was okay to marry her. His father argued and specially asked him for his opinion. Although he didn't say anything explicitly, he hinted that his cousin sent him gifts again and again. She even came to send him food and some small knitting supplies at night. He didn't know what she meant. After hearing his words, his mother's face changed dramatically, but his father still pounded the table and stood up. Therefore, his cousin became his second brother's concubine. Because his second brother hadn't married his legal wife yet, even if she was only a concubine, she didn't have a legal wife. That was to say, in order to show respect to the future second aunt, the two of them didn't really consummate the marriage. Only after the second sister-in-law married in the future and Gu Shimei formally greeted her could she officially become his second brother's concubine. He dealt with these things quickly. When he saw Gu Shishu looking at him with tears in her eyes, he felt extremely calm, as if the person in front of him was not the cousin he used to care about. As a cold-hearted person, he naturally wouldn't care about others more. Moreover, he was now in the Ministry of Justice, and the people in the Ministry of Justice couldn't be emotional. However, inexplicably, the more he said this kind of normal words, the more uncomfortable he felt, and even an inexplicable sense of guilt. When Shichi reached out to rub between his eyebrows, and those discontinuous dreams inexplicably appeared in his mind again. The dreams were naturally fake, and they hadn't disturbed him for a period of time. At this time, they inexplicably increased. Could it be that he was under too much pressure recently? Of course, the minister meant to find out something as soon as possible so that he could report it to the emperor. Fifth miss, Lord Wen? The two of them spoke at almost the same time, and then stopped at the same time. Fifth miss, please. Lord Wen, please, the two of them said together after a moment of silence. Lord Wen, then I won't be polite. I want to say that you've already investigated very clearly. In fact, there's no need to ask me. I'm just a girl in the boudoir. The people I offended are naturally the people in the boudoir. Fortunately, my life is still considered tough. Otherwise, Lord Wen might not be able to see me anymore. She talked about her own affairs in a slightly sarcastic tone, which even concerned her life. This kind of indifference made Wen Shichi feel very uncomfortable, as if something was pressing on his chest. Suppressing his discomfort, Wen Shichi quickly recovered and said, Fifth miss, can't you provide us with some clues? I really don't have any clues. If I knew that someone wanted to harm me, I wouldn't have gone down the mountain at that time. As for the past, which girl would risk her reputation? Xiao Wanru said calmly. Although she was calm, there was a hint of indifference in her words. What she said was extremely reasonable. The reputation of a girl in the boudoir was very precious. A slight mistake would lead to eternal damnation. No miss from an aristocratic family dared to make a joke of her reputation. Thinking of what he had found, Wen Shichi couldn't help sighing for the bad fate of the fifth Miss Xiao. The fifth miss of Duke Xing's mansion was actually a poor person. Since you don't know about it, I'll leave. Wen Shichi said decisively. Chu Lu, see Lord Wen off. Xiao Wanru was more decisive. Although her voice was weak, it was a little cold and decisive. It seemed that she wanted Wen Shichi to leave early without saying any polite words. Wen Shichi remembered that when they met for the first time, this girl was obviously very happy to see him. Why was she so indifferent to him now? Although he stood up, he stopped and said unconsciously, Fifth miss, do you know what happened at the door? As soon as he said this, when Shichi felt a little regretful. He didn't want to intervene in this matter and just wanted to watch the fun. Previously, when Xiao Yanru heard that he was going to go up the mountain to find Xiao Wanru to find out the truth, she specially sent someone to tell him to help take a few people from Duke Xing's mansion to Huaguang Temple to send some things for Xiao Wanru. It was not a big deal, so when Shichi agreed, unexpectedly, Duke Xing's mansion sent not only the old maids from the mansion but also 2 nuns from the Yuhui nunnery. They said that they would help to send Xiao Wanru's things down. Although it was a little strange for nuns to go to Huaguang Temple, it was not a big deal. Naturally, he took them up the mountain. As for other things, they had nothing to do with him. He just went there by the way. However, he didn't expect that what he had planned to do was broken by him at this time. Your Excellency, do you know what it is? Xiao Wanru was stunned for a moment. She didn't expect that when Shichi would talk about it. Since when Shichi spoke, she knew that he was trying to distance himself from what happened outside, indicating that it had nothing to do with him, so she wouldn't ask about it. She didn't expect that he would say such a thing when he was about to leave. It was really surprising. But since he asked, Xiao Wanru certainly wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. Your Excellency, you should have listened for a while just now. I wonder what you found out. What's in the box? Since when Shichi asked, he simply intervened directly at this time. After thinking for a while, he found the key point. I don't know. Xiao Wanru said lightly and asked rhetorically, what box? She had just woken up, so she naturally didn't know why there was a quarrel outside. When Shichi was silent for a moment and then said slowly, they said that there was a box. Your maid said that it was not yours, and the people from the Yuhui nunnery said that it was found in your silence room. That's why they quarreled. My silence room? Xiao Wanru repeated in surprise. It is indeed your silence room. I heard that you have been cultivating in it before, when Shichi said in a deep voice. That silence room is not mine, but Big Sister's. When I went up the mountain, she was about to go down the mountain. Seeing that this silence room had a good scenery and a good place, she specially borrowed it. Xiao Wanru thought for a moment and said, even if it was not yours, you have borrowed that silence room for so long, when Shichi told her the truth. In this respect, it was most likely that the box in the room was left by Xiao Wanru. Your Excellency, can I borrow the official of the Ministry of Justice you brought here? Xiao Wanru thought for a moment and said, I heard that the official of the Ministry of Justice has a pair of sharp words. Sure. When Shichi said straightforwardly. At this time, he was also interested and wanted to know how Xiao Wanru solved this problem. Chu Lu, come in. Xiao Wanru said. Chu Lu answered and went in. Her voice was very low, but it could be heard that it was Xiao Wanru's instruction. Chu Lu answered repeatedly and then came out from inside. Your Excellency, please go out with Chu Lu first. Please be a witness. Xiao Wanru's soft voice came from inside. Although it sounded a little weak, it inexplicably aroused when Shichi's interest. Now he really wanted to see how this matter would be solved. Just now, he stood aside and witnessed the whole thing. The servants of Duke Xing's mansion wanted to send the box in, but the servant girls guarding the door did not allow them to do so. One servant girl pushed 2 people, but she was not at a disadvantage and even pushed the 2 old maids out of the courtyard. The 2 nuns of the Yue nunnery also repeatedly proved that the box was in the silence room where 5th Miss Xiao rested. The 5th Miss had been in the Yue nunnery for more than 2 years and spent most of her time in this silence room. Who else could the box belong to if not the 5th Miss? However, the servant girls refused to admit it and insisted that the box did not belong to their Mississippi. They said that there were some sundries piled up in the corner of the silence room. Because the silence room belonged to the 1st Miss, it was inconvenient for them to look through it. No one knew what was piled up there, let alone the box. One thing was certain, the box definitely did not belong to their Mississippi. They had been wasting time like this until now. It was a complete mess. When Shichi felt that even if he was the one to calculate it, it would be difficult for him to argue. When Shichi said goodbye and followed Chu Lu out. When they came to the gate of the courtyard, Xiao Wanru's servant girl was still standing at the gate, as if she could hold the pass against 10,000 people. In front of so many people, the nuns of the Yue nunnery could only persuade them kindly on the side, but they could not help the 2 old maids of Duke Xing's mansion openly. The two old maids had been stopped here for so long, so they were so annoyed that they wanted to curse loudly. Fortunately, they still had a trace of reason, so they could only gnash their teeth and pretend to be reasonable. The two officials of the Ministry of Justice, who had followed Shichi in, stood in the courtyard with their arms crossed and watched the show. Since the official didn't say anything, they just watched the show. Outside the outer courtyard, there were a lot of people around, all pointing and talking. Most of those who had watched for a long time knew what had happened. There were all kinds of comments. Chulu came out and whispered a few words in Yujia's ear. Yujia turned her head and seemed to look at Shichi in the corridor suspiciously. After a long while, she nodded reluctantly. Chulu walked over and said to the two officials of the Ministry of Justice who were watching excitedly, "Sirwen, please do us a favor." The two officials of the Ministry of Justice were watching happily, but they didn't expect that they would also be asked to help. They looked up at Shichi in the corridor and saw him nod to them. They knew that he agreed with them to intervene, so they could only stand up helplessly, put down their arms, and said, "Tell me, what do you want us to do?" "Do you see that box?" Chulu said with a smile. The two officials of the Ministry of Justice nodded. They had also watched the whole scene, so how could they not know the box? "Can you see anything from the appearance of this box? I heard that the officials of the Ministry of Justice are all very experienced. I wonder if you can do it?" Chulu smiled and said meaningfully. Chapter 627. Since Lord Wen had agreed to it, the two people from the Ministry of Justice intervened. Lord Wen was young and promising. If they could show their face in front of Lord Wen, they might have a bright future. Thinking of this, the two people from the Ministry of Justice immediately walked over in high spirits. Of course, they were from the Ministry of Justice, and they couldn't be looked down upon by a servant girl. "Get out of the way." The box was placed between the two old maids of Duke Xing's mansion. Seeing the two people from the Ministry of Justice coming over, they became uneasy. "There's nothing in the box. It's not something illegal." An old maid stepped forward and stopped the people from the Ministry of Justice. The first miss had ordered the people from the Ministry of Justice to take them up the mountain to make a show. She didn't really want the people from the Ministry of Justice to investigate anything. "We have to check it to know whether it's illegal or not." The people from the Ministry of Justice glanced at the old maid and said lightly. The other one came over, squatted in front of the box, and checked it carefully. The people from the Ministry of Justice actually intervened. The onlookers became more and more confused. Was there anything illegal in the box? The noise around became lower, and everyone looked at the two people from the Ministry of Justice. Many people in the capital city could recognize the clothes of the people from the Ministry of Justice. "It's really nothing. We just brought the box that the fifth miss of our mansion left in the Yuhui nunnery. Maybe it's been a long time, so the fifth miss can't remember it clearly." The other old maid smiled dryly and reached out to pull the box back. Can't remember her own box? The standing staff of the Ministry of Justice glanced at the old maid sideways. He had seen many people like this when handling cases, and he also saw the panic on the old maid's face. When he didn't intervene before, he just took it as a joke. The two old maids of Duke Xing's mansion didn't seem to have done anything wrong. Now he wanted to intervene, but he saw that the old maid looked very uneasy. Could it be that there was really something wrong with the box? What Lord Wen means is that this is the royal family's monastery, and not everyone can quarrel as they please. If this matter were to blow up, it would be disrespecting the dignity of the royal family. We can't let you continue quarreling, right? It's fine if Lord Wen didn't see it. Since he has seen it, he has to investigate this matter for you, so as not to disturb the peace of Huaguang Temple. The staff of the Ministry of Justice said with a smile. His words were extremely polite, and his words also seemed to express his helplessness to intervene. This kind of thing was fine if they did not see it, but since they saw it, they naturally had to intervene. Although it was not a big case, the ultimate purpose of the Ministry of Justice was to maintain public security and help people deal with affairs. From this point of view, there was nothing wrong with this regulation. But this is not a big deal. The previous old maid said, but the old maid behind her reached out and pulled her sleeves, motioning her to step back. Then she said to the officials of the Ministry of Justice with a smile, "Your Excellencies, since you are so determined to help us, we can't be so unappreciative. Please." This old maid's idea was different from that of the previous one. Although she didn't want the officials of the Ministry of Justice to intervene, she just wanted to find an accident. However, after such a long stalemate, they didn't find the accident. Since the officials of the Ministry of Justice wanted to intervene, she would let them. Opening the box would only bring benefits. Old Madam had said that they should find a way to open the box on the spot. The two old maids stepped aside, and the two officials of the Ministry of Justice came over and squatted down in front of the box. They didn't rush to open the box, but carefully checked it first. Since they were going to buy it, of course, they should check it first. The box seemed to have been there for a period of time, and they couldn't tell how long it had been there for, but it was certain that it had been there for a long time. They looked down at the lock hanging on it and looked at it carefully. Then they discussed in a low voice and gave a pertinent conclusion: "This lock has been there for at least 3 years. Impossible, how is it possible?" The old maid, who had been standing on the side and didn't think that the two officials of the Ministry of Justice would find out anything, turned pale and said anxiously when she heard this, "This lock must have been there for more than 3 years, but it's not clear how long it has been there." One of the officials of the Ministry of Justice continued to say without looking at the old maid's pale face, "That's great. Our miss has been in the Yuhui nunnery for more than 2 years at most. The first miss has lived in this silence room before, so the things in it must also belong to her." Yu Jie's eyes lit up and she immediately said excitedly, "You're not sure how long it has been, are you? Since you're not sure, how dare you say that this lock must have been there for more than 3 years? An old maid asked discontentedly. Coincidentally, this lock was popular in the capital city 3 years ago. Because the craftsman who made this lock was involved in a murder case, this lock was lost later. Look at the marks of the lock. It seems to be from 3 years ago. The officials of the Ministry of Justice said, "Well, you can't say that someone bought this lock long ago and didn't use it at that time until later." The old maid's heart skipped a beat, but she still said stubbornly, "It turns out that this lock is not popular now, but has been lost long ago. That's great. 3 years ago, my miss might have just arrived in the capital city. She wouldn't have gone out to buy any lock, let alone bought it early." Yu Jie immediately retorted, "Yes, I've already bought it. Just put it aside and prepare for the next round." "But you can't say that this lock must have been locked 3 years ago." The old maid was still stubborn and said unconvinced. The officials of the Ministry of Justice ignored them, took a brick to break the lock, opened the box, and took out a set of clothes and a box of jewelry from it. The clothes were so gorgeous that many people were amazed. They were almost dazzling in the sun, but they looked a little small. When the jewelry box was opened, people felt that the jewelry inside was gorgeous and extraordinary. Such a small dress is suitable for the 5th miss to wear when she went up the mountain. The 1st miss definitely can't wear it. The two old maids looked at each other, breathed a sigh of relief, and immediately pretended to be very casual and said with a smile. When Xiao Wanru came to the Yuhui nunnery, she was still young, so it was normal that the clothes she made were small. Where did these clothes come from?" Yu Jie and Chu Lu opened their mouths wide in shock and could hardly believe what they saw. "I don't know what's going on." Obviously, the two servant girls also felt dizzy. For a moment, they didn't understand what was going on. Looking at the clothes, they really couldn't figure out when the clothes were made. The officials of the Ministry of Justice shook out the clothes and said in a businesslike manner, "The clothes are not big, and they are suitable for 11 or 12 years old girls." When the 5th miss went to the Yuhui nunnery, she was 11 years old. But the 5th miss went to the Yuhui nunnery to observe mourning for the heir and infanta Qinghua. How could she wear such colorful clothes and such gorgeous jewelry? What the hell is going on? The two old maids were also confused, as if they really didn't know anything. But their voices were not low, so all the people around them heard them. Thinking of what had happened before, many people felt that they understood. The 5th Miss Xiao was obviously a person who fished for fame. She said that she was observing mourning for her parents. Looking at these clothes and jewelry, it was obvious that she pretended to be indifferent on the surface, but in fact, Everything was for others to see. These clothes and jewelry were obviously for the fifth Miss Xiao's own use. Otherwise, the servant girl would not be so anxious to deny the things in the box. She was afraid that others would find the things in the box and suspect the fifth Miss Xiao. These things definitely don't belong to our Mississippi. Our Miss has never seen these things. Someone wants to frame our Mississippi. If once is not enough, they will frame her again. Yu Jie also came to her senses at this time and said angrily, "Our Miss almost lost her life on the mountain road before. Isn't this enough?" Her words reminded everyone of what had happened just now. Many people were still secretly discussing the danger of this matter. They all felt that the conclusion of the Ministry of Justice was too simple. This matter sounded not simple. Why did it turn a big deal into a small one and a small one into nothing in the end? However, in this matter, the fifth Miss Xiao was really very magnanimous. She actually had no objection to the closing of the case and agreed with it. It could be seen that she was a kind girl. If she was really a kind and beautiful miss, it seemed that she would not really do such an unfilial thing. Seeing that many people began to waver, the old maid hurriedly said, "How can you say that? Who would frame the fifth miss? Why didn't anyone frame her? On the mountain road before, our fifth miss almost lost her life. At that time, the first miss was involved. Now the first miss is involved. Is the first miss incompatible with our miss? When our miss wanted to go to the Yuhui nunnery to cultivate in seclusion, the first miss also hurried down the mountain at that time. Now these things have something to do with the first miss." Yu Jie angrily interrupted the old maid. She had always been bolder than ordinary maids. Moreover, this was not Duke Xing's mansion. Even strictly speaking, she could not be regarded as a maid of Duke Xing's mansion now. Therefore, she felt more justified when talking about this matter. Hearing what she said, the old maid's face changed dramatically in shock. She never expected that Yu Jie would say such extremely bold words in front of so many people. This kind of words was not something that a servant like her could say at all. Wasn't she afraid that old madam would beat her to death if she knew it? You are presumptuous. Compared with the life of our miss, even if I am presumptuous, it is better than someone framing our miss unscrupulously," Yu Jie said coldly. She took 2 steps forward and bowed respectfully to the 2 officials of the Ministry of Justice. "Your Excellencies, please find out where these clothes and jewelry come from. Is there really no way to find out who slandered our miss? The lock from 3 years ago can only cover the clothes that our miss used to wear. We haven't been in the capital for a long time, so we really don't know about this kind of lock. Moreover, our miss was even younger at that time and had no chance to go out. Even if she went out, she didn't know about this kind of lock. But now everything points to our Mississippi. I don't know who our miss offended and made her so filthy." Chu Lu was also eloquent and unforgiving. Although she was not as sharp as Yu Jie, the tone in her words was close to Yu Jie's. They echoed each other and cooperated very well. Chapter 628. Is this the colorful yarn? A person of the Ministry of Justice touched the material at the collar and said with uncertainty, "Let me have a look." The other person of the Ministry of Justice took it and pinched it carefully. He was also a little hesitant. "It looks like it." Because the material of the colorful yarn was precious, few people could really see and touch it. How about asking His Excellency to have a look? "Okay, I'll take it now." The 2 officials of the Ministry of Justice discussed for a while, and then one of them took the clothes and walked inside to Wen Shiqi in the corridor. Wen Shiqi took it and pinched it carefully, and then nodded, confirming that it was the colorful yarn. Then the 2 of them whispered a few words, and the official of the Ministry of Justice returned to the front of the courtyard. He raised the collar in his hand with certainty and said, "A piece of colorful yarn is used in this dress. The material of colorful yarn can't be obtained by ordinary people. It used to be an offering. Only some aristocratic families in the capital city can get the reward from the Imperial Palace. There is such a material." Many people had never seen the material of the colorful yarn, but they had heard of it. Hearing that the 2 officials of the Ministry of Justice had identified the material of the collar with such certainty, they looked at the 2 old maids of Duke Xing's mansion in confusion. Did they really want to frame the fifth Miss Xiao's reputation so that they made this matter? If these things did not coincide, it would not be so suspicious. The lock that was popular 3 years ago, the obvious embroidery on the front of the belt, and the colorful yarn that only noble aristocratic families could get all showed that someone might deliberately promote this matter. This may also be Great Elder Princess? An old maid saw that the situation was not good, so she stammered and explained. Nanny, please be careful. And Great Elder Princess is the Great Elder Princess of the royal family. You, an old maid, can't casually testify against her. If there is no real evidence, I'm afraid that you will die in the end without knowing how. Yu Jie sneered and interrupted the old maid. The meaning of her words made the old maid tightly purse her mouth and dare not say anything else. What Yu Jie said was true. If she dared to say that there was no solid evidence, Great Elder Princess had the right to punish her. As an old maid, her identity was not enough for old madam to contradict Great Elder Princess for her. It's just to send a box up the mountain. You've made such a big fuss and even brought the nun of the Yuhui nunnery with you. It's just a box, and it's enough for 2 people to send it here. But you brought the nun of the Yuhui nunnery with you. This will attract people's attention. What's more, you're going with the officials of the Ministry of Justice. Yu Jie ordered an old maid to leave. She looked up at the crowd around her with a faint smile on her face, but there was a hint of sarcasm in her tone. Putting all these things together, it was impossible for people not to suspect Duke Xing's mansion. Some people even thought of what Yu Jie said before, that the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion seemed to be at odds with 5th Miss Xiao. Then they thought of the rumors all over the capital city that 5th Miss's accident seemed to have something to do with this 1st Mississippi. It seemed that the 1st Miss wanted to kill 5th Mississippi. After one failed plan, they made another plan. Did they want to ruin 5th Miss's reputation? No, it's just a coincidence. The reason why we brought the 2 nuns up here is that we were afraid that 5th Miss didn't know about it, so we asked the 2 nuns to come up the mountain to be witnesses. Another old maid stammered and explained. It's just to send a box. Could it be that you know that the things in the box are harmful to your reputation, so you specially asked the nuns of the Yuhui nunnery to come here to be witnesses? Did you force our miss to admit it? Yu Jie asked with a sneer. She took a few steps forward and approached the old maid with cold eyes. The old maid was startled and hurriedly stepped back, looking to the side. The old maid, who had pursed her lips tightly, was still scared and didn't dare to say anything. Seeing the old maid's pleading eyes, she thought for a while and lowered her head. She didn't say what she had said before, so she didn't dare to say anything at this time. How could we know? The old maid said. She could only explain to save herself. If you don't know, why do you have to force our miss to admit this box? We have never seen this box. Although this box was indeed found in the silence room, there are some sundries left by the 1st Miss in the silence room. Our 5th Miss has not checked the corner. This silence room was originally borrowed by our 5th Miss, so it is impossible for us to take away all the 1st Miss's things. Yu Jie said unforgivingly. The old maid became more and more flustered. She was forced by Yu Jie to sweat all over her head. She was no longer arrogant and domineering as when she sent things in at the beginning. She felt a chill on her back. Our miss told you to take all the things back. She said that sisters should get along well with each other. What happened before was an accident, and what happened now is also an accident. Nannies, please take her words to the 1st Mississippi. Our 5th Miss is now hiding in Huaguang Temple and just wants to pray for the heir and the Infanta quietly. Chu Lu had just gone in once. When she appeared in front of everyone again, she was much more gentle. She was no longer as aggressive as before. Although she looked angry, she seemed to have the intention to compromise. Although she was very unwilling, she was very unwilling. Chu Lu came over and bowed to the 2 officials of the Ministry of Justice and said, Our miss asked me to thank you. Let's forget about what happened today, and don't pursue it anymore. In the end, her voice was almost inaudible, but those who listened to her quietly still heard it clearly. They saw that the girl was obviously aggrieved and angry, but she had to lower her head. Thinking of what she had mentioned before, what happened to the 5th Miss Xiao in the Yue nunnery was an accident, And what happened now was also an accident, so they couldn't blame anyone, let alone the first Miss Xiao, who had something to do with these accidents. It seemed that the first Miss Xiao's character was not as good as the rumors said, and she might even be vicious. Although what happened in the Yuhui nunnery was not a big deal, it was a hindrance to a woman's reputation. If what happened in the Yuhui nunnery was not an accident, the fifth Miss Xiao would be killed. All in all, connecting the dots, as well as the servant girl's tears of compromise at the corners of her eyes, made the onlookers feel that the first Miss Xiao of Duke Xing's mansion was really not a good person. Even if she was beautiful, she was not a good person in terms of behavior. The crowd began to talk in groups of 3 or 4, and a long time ago was also brought up. At that time, they thought that the first Miss Xiao was talented and intelligent, but now they felt that she was scheming. Hearing this, the 2 old maids of Duke Xing's mansion turned pale and panicked. For a moment, they didn't know how to end the matter. Since Xiao Wanru said that she would not pursue the matter, the 2 officials of the Ministry of Justice threw the clothes back into the box, and then pushed the box to the 2 old maids of Duke Xing's mansion naturally. After that, they retreated to the courtyard and stood behind Wen Shiqi. At this time, the 2 old maids did not dare to have any evil thoughts, and ran away with the box in dejection. The nun of the Yuhui nunnery looked around at the pilgrims who were talking about it and could not stay any longer, so she followed the 2 old maids down the mountain. There was no more fun to watch, so the onlookers also left. But even after they left, they were still talking about it. This matter was not like what had happened in the Yuhui nunnery before. At that time, it was reasonable to say that it was an accident. After all, there was no evidence to prove that Duke Xing's mansion had intervened. As for the excuses between Duke Yong's mansion and Duke Xing's mansion, it could be regarded as an accident, and no one dared to take the responsibility. But what happened today was really presented in front of everyone. Seeing that the 2 old maids were speechless later, they knew that someone had indeed framed the 5th Miss Xiao. Thinking of the 5th Miss's life experience, they felt that the 5th Miss was more and more pitiful. She was actually bullied by the 1st Miss of Duke Xing's mansion. What the first beauty in the capital city! What unparalleled talent! With such a character, whoever married such a 1st Miss would inevitably have a restless family. There were many onlookers, and they said all kinds of things. Some of them said more and more outrageous. There were people from all walks of life who came up the mountain to worship Buddha. What was more, most of them were women, so their words might become more and more unpleasant in the end. When Shichi watched the whole thing quietly, he frowned slightly and looked around. Seeing that the onlookers had left, he walked out with his hands clasped behind his back. In fact, he did not like this kind of scheming woman. Whether Xiao Wanru had been framed by Duke Xing's mansion or not, it was certain that Xiao Wanru was very scheming. This reminded him of his cousin, which made him very uncomfortable. Looking at Wen Shiqi's expression, the 2 subordinates of the Ministry of Justice did not dare to say a word and followed him to leave. After everyone left, Yu Jie and Chu Lu closed the door of the courtyard and went to the main room. Xiao Wanru stood at the window of the main room. The falling curtain blocked the view outside, but she could vaguely see the scene outside. "Miss, they are all gone," Chu Lu said with a smile, without the grievance and anger on her face just now. Xiao Wanru slowly withdrew her gaze and said with a slight smile, "Yu Jie, go to the monks of Huaguang Temple and ask for a few scriptures later. Tell them that I will copy scriptures to calm my mind." Things happened one after another. Even if Xiao Yanru wanted to hide behind the scenes, she would pull her out. Xiao Yanru had always been cunning, and many things were related to her. However, when she investigated, she would always find others. Just like what happened just now, if she really wanted to investigate, Xiao Wanru could be sure that it would be either old Madam of Duke Xing or Madam of Duke Xing in the end, and Xiao Yanru must be flawless. But now, Chu Li's words went straight to the point. The most important thing was that Xiao Wanru had not asked anyone to investigate again. Since she had stopped investigating, Xiao Yanru could not prove that she was innocent even if she wanted to. Now it was Xiao Yanru who should be in a mess. She was not afraid of her being in a mess, but afraid that she would not be in a mess. "Chu Lu, close the door and refuse visitors. Tell the monks in the temple that I am still recuperating and spend the rest of my time copying scriptures and praying for my parents." I have no mood to do anything else. Ask them to help stop visitors. It was impossible for the monks in Huaguang Temple not to know that it had caused such a big commotion. Chapter 629. Xiao Yinru arrived at Huaguang Temple in the afternoon, but was stopped by the reception monk at the Buddha Hall outside Xiao Wanru's courtyard. Master, I'm going to see fifth sister. Grandma asked me to explain to her what happened in the morning. Xiao Yinru bowed to the monk in her way very politely and said softly. Her gentle attitude, coupled with her beautiful face, left a good impression on others. However, the monk she met now was not an ordinary one. First Miss Xiao, the fifth Miss refuses to see guests. While recuperating, she spends the rest of her time copying scriptures and praying for blessings. I'm afraid that she can't see you. The reception monk bowed politely and said, I just want to see her and then leave after a short explanation. I won't delay fifth sister's quiet cultivation. Xiao Yinru pleaded softly. First Miss, since you are going to copy scriptures and pray for blessings, you need to be quiet and focused. I hope you won't disturb her. The reception monk shook his head with a smile. It'll only take a moment. It'll be over soon. Xiao Yinru said angrily. Not even for a moment. Sincerity is the key to serving. How can you disturb your state of mind because of some trivial things? The reception monk said. My master just wants to tell the fifth miss what happened in the morning. My master doesn't know about those boxes at all. It was old madam who sent them here, but people outside are saying that it's my master's fault. What the hell is going on? Shuqi couldn't help standing up from behind Xiao Yinru and saying angrily to defend her master. Xiao Yinru looked aggrieved and tearful. It's our fault for what happened in the morning. A distinguished royal guest like the fifth Miss Xiao, who is in poor health, shouldn't be disturbed. If it weren't for the arrival of the Ministry of Justice, we wouldn't have let so many people go there and made such a scene. Now that it's all right, First Miss, why are you so persistent? The reception monk said gently and put his palms together slightly in front of Xiao Yinru, but he didn't move his feet. What do you mean by our first miss is persistent? It's obviously that the fifth miss said something misleading and made our first miss be criticized. Shuqi said angrily. Her words were a little out of control. It seemed that she was really anxious. First Miss Xiao, the fifth miss is of royal blood and now she is cultivating in seclusion in our temple. If something happens to her in our temple, not to mention our temple, even the first Miss Xiao can't afford it. If your servant girl's words were heard by others, it would be a charge of slander, and first Miss would also be implicated. The reception monk's face also turned cold as he said unhappily. Shuqi was so angry that her face almost turned green. When she was about to rebuke her angrily, she was stopped by Xiao Yinru. Thank you, Grandmaster. My maid was impolite. When can fifth sister rest? I'll come to see her when she has a rest. Xiao Yinru took a deep breath, suppressed the irritation in her heart, and tried hard to calm the anger in her heart. Pent-up anger. She had thought that this matter could not be traced to her, but she did not expect that Xiao Wanru's servant girl would be so rude, implying that she was the one who hurt Xiao Wanru, and also bringing out all the things related to her before. She heard rumors that she was jealous of Xiao Wanru and secretly set Xiao Wanru up again and again. She was so vicious that she wanted to ruin Xiao Wanru's reputation or life, which made her so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. Xiao Yinru had thought that she would not get involved in this matter, but she did not expect that she would get involved in it. Xiao Yinru knew that the longer the rumors spread, the worse it would sound. She could only go up the mountain in a hurry, hoping to show her sisterly affection in front of others. Unexpectedly, she did not even get to see Xiao Wanru. Huaguang Temple was different from Yuhui Nunnery, so she did not dare to be tough. Looking at the monks of Huaguang Temple, she knew that it was impossible for her to see Xiao Wanru now. She had no choice but to grit her teeth and go to an ordinary courtyard, saying that she would stay in Huaguang Temple for a few days and offer incense. The reception monk led her to the courtyard where she would live next. She found that the courtyard was very far away from Xiao Wanru's. One was in the east, and the other was in the west. It was impossible for her to sneak over. The places where ordinary pilgrims lived and the noble pilgrims with royal blood lived were separated by a long distance. Now Xiao Yanru's courtyard was deliberately isolated. Xiao Yanru could not get angry and could only wait. She did not believe that Xiao Wanru was really cultivating in seclusion. In the next few days, Xiao Yanru would go to the courtyard where Xiao Wanru lived as long as she had time. She thought that no matter when, as long as she could see Xiao Wanru, she could show her sisterly affection with her. However, Xiao Wanru's courtyard had been tightly closed. Every day, only the novice monk who delivered the food came over with the food basket. Xiao Yanru also wanted to sneak near the courtyard with Shuqi, but every time before she reached the gate of the courtyard, she was stopped by the monks of Huaguang Temple. Moreover, they asked Xiao Yanru to leave in a businesslike manner. This was the place where 5th Miss Xiao cultivated in seclusion, and no one was allowed to disturb her at will. After such things happened several times, Xiao Yanru was angry and resentful, but she was also helpless. This was Huaguang Temple, not Yuhui Nunnery, where she had lived for a long time and left some manpower. If it was in Yuhui Nunnery, even if Xiao Wanru said that she wanted to cultivate in seclusion, she could still see her, but it was okay in Huaguang Temple. Huaguang Temple had a strong foundation, so it was not afraid of a miss from an aristocratic family like her. With the foundation of the royal family, Huaguang Temple dared to do many things that other temples did not dare to do, such as stopping Xiao Yanru, the eldest lineal daughter of an aristocratic family, outside the gate of the courtyard and not letting her in. Xiao Yanru was angry and anxious, and finally realized that she was different from Xiao Wanru. The difference was that her mother's family was a little weaker after all, so how could it compare with Xiao Wanru's royal blood? This was also why she was at a disadvantage when facing Xiao Wanru. If her mother were Infanta Qinghua and Great Elder Princess were her maternal grandmother, she would definitely not fall into such a place. In the past, she would also think that her mother was a capable person who could marry into Duke Xing's mansion from a small family and hold the entire Duke Xing's mansion tightly. But now, she, who was anxious and angry, could only wait in the courtyard of ordinary pilgrims and wait for Xiao Wanru to go out one day. It was because she was not a member of the royal family. If she was a member of the royal family, how could she be so aggrieved? Every time she thought of this, Xiao Yanru gritted her teeth in anger. If it went on like this, all the plans in the past would not be able to come true. She must see Xiao Wanru and make it clear with her what had happened before. She must make everyone think that she and Xiao Wanru were on good terms with each other. This was a royal temple. There were restrictions on her, so there must be restrictions on Xiao Wanru. She had the patience to wait. First Miss Xiao still lives in Huaguang Temple and does not leave. From time to time, she wanders around not far from our courtyard. Qing came in and reported. It was impossible for Yu Jie and Chu Lu to find out about this. Let her wander around. Anyway, I don't plan to go out now. Xiao Wanru put down the pen in her hand, exercised her wrist, and said calmly. The reason why she chose Huaguang Temple was that its status was different from that of other temples. Even Xiao Yanru could not do it with the status of Duke Xing's mansion. Perhaps Huaguang Temple could make a little concession, but it could not be done twice. If it made another concession, it would seem deliberate. When she made such a big trouble before, she did not see any monk in Huaguang Temple. It could be seen that someone had secretly taken care of them, but it could not be done twice. She specially asked Chu Lu to make it clear to the monks in the temple that she would only copy scriptures in addition to recuperating from her injury and would not see any guests. This meant that she wanted to make it clear to Huaguang Temple that she did not want to see anyone. It could be regarded as an official notice to Huaguang Temple. If such a thing happened again, Huaguang Temple would not be able to avoid it even if it wanted to. The first time was an accident. It could be said that Xiao Wanru did not take good care of her when she came here and did not notice that such a thing had happened. If such an accident happened again, Huaguang Temple would not be able to escape the responsibility. Even her maternal grandma could intervene and ask Huaguang Temple about it. Miss, it's useless for the first miss to wander around. At this time, the rumors outside have already been very bad. She has been secretly targeting you and wants to shift all the blame to others. She is really too vicious. Yu Jie brought in a cup of tea and said angrily. Xiao Wanru's trusted subordinates did not have a good impression of Duke Xing's mansion at all, and they were even more disgusted with the first Miss Xiao, who had bad intentions. She wandered around me. If she saw me, she would naturally show her sisterly affection to me and even use some tricks to force me to have a blind date with her. Xiao Wanru said with a faint look in her eyes. She picked up the teacup at hand, took a sip, and said lightly, Miss, are you going to avoid her all the time? Yu Jie became uneasy. It won't be long. My maternal grandma said that the two princes will officially start to choose concubines soon. It may be a consort selection. Xiao Wanru said flatly. She was not sure about it. Her maternal grandma just said so, and her words actually meant that she should also participate in the consort selection. But no matter what, Xiao Yanru in this life was different from the one in the last life, so it was impossible for her to take the lead. Xiao Yanru, who had lost the lead, would panic. Since it was unprofitable for her to stay here, she would definitely take a shortcut and would never hang herself on her. Moreover, there was one more thing that had vaguely appeared in her dreams these days. It was very messy, which even made her feel that she didn't know her previous life and this life. There was a tunnel under the silence room. The tunnel had been dug through the silence room, and it might have been dug through Xiao Yanru's room. Xiao Wanru remembered that when Xiao Yanru first came back, there was a lot of noise in her room, and she didn't allow others to touch it. Her empty main room had been very quiet before. Lying in bed at night, she was still thinking that Xiao Yanru seemed to know the tunnel. The tunnel should lead to the depths of the Yuhui nunnery and inside the high wall. Commandery Prince Qing, who was inside the high wall, had appeared. What was the use of the tunnel? Why did she dig it again? Or perhaps the tunnel had been dug long ago. In this case, it should have something to do with Commandery Prince Qing, right? It seemed that she had forgotten an important thing. What was it? In a daze, she seemed to see Xiao Yanru standing in a pavilion, dressed in gorgeous clothes, slightly lowering her eyes to look at her kneeling in front of her. She slightly raised the corners of her mouth with a gentle and noble smile, as if the person kneeling in front of her was just an ant. Who was next to her? There were many people, and she couldn't see them clearly. There were men and women. Chapter 630. She couldn't see clearly in a daze, but she felt that she could see it clearly, so she tried hard to see it, but she always felt that there was a veil. What was it that she couldn't see clearly, as if it seemed to be a key, a very key person, that she had been ignoring? Then in a daze, she saw herself lying under the Imperial Palace. The high Imperial Palace was dignified and towering, very cold, but what was colder was her heart. Chu Liuchen's face appeared under the Imperial Palace. His eyes were so deep that there seemed to be no light, and they almost covered the whole sky. The expression on his face was desperate, with a bloodthirsty aura that could destroy the world. Then there was blood. All the beauties fell to the ground, and their once beautiful faces were twisted and ferocious. The beautiful palace was almost dyed red with blood. The once beautiful and noble Imperial Palace had turned into an azura hell. It was cold and gloomy. Drops of blood gathered together as if they were guarding something. She couldn't see clearly, but she felt her body tremble. She suddenly opened her eyes and looked at a spot in the darkness. She was so nervous that her whole body tensed up. The feeling of waking up and dreaming was so clear. She could clearly see the desperate and twisted expressions of those beauties. The corpses of flower-like girls were scattered everywhere in the palace. It was the Shuraba that she had never seen before. Some of them were even the beauties she had drawn before. They were all the daughters of aristocratic families who entered the palace for the draft. She remembered that her purpose of entering the palace was to draw pictures of the beauties for the draft and then submit them to the emperor for selection. But these beauties were all dead, and they died in such a bloody way. What did she forget, or did she get the order wrong? Why was it so messy? In the past, she felt that even though her memory was a little vague, she still remembered those things very clearly. But now, even she had to doubt whether she really remembered it clearly. Why did she feel that it contradicted her previous memory? What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? A voice suddenly came from the darkness. Xiao Wenru froze for a moment and subconsciously wanted to scream, but someone covered her mouth, and then a gentle voice said, "It's me." Hearing Chu Liuchen's voice clearly, Xiao Wenru breathed a sigh of relief. The faint fragrance of medicine was extremely pleasant. She couldn't help but relax and reach out to push Chu Liuchen's hand. Seeing that she had calmed down, Chu Liuchen put his hand down. "What happened? Did you have a nightmare?" After saying that, she casually leaned against Xiao Wenru and even took a cushion beside her head and leaned against it lazily. "I don't know. It seems to be a dream of Xiao Yenru. There are some things I can't see clearly in the dream." Xiao Wenru reached out to rub her forehead, feeling a dull pain in her head and feeling very uncomfortable. She closed her eyes again, shutting off the tumbling heart that was caused by the bloody scene. Did she make a mistake or did she not understand something? The memories of his previous life were too blurry, especially this part. It seemed that his consciousness did not dissipate after he was cut in half, and he even saw some things after he was cut in half. Why did she seem to see Xiao Yenru's face among the dead for a moment? How did she die? How could this be? You dreamed of Xiao Yenru? You don't dream about me, but Xiao Yenru. Do you still have any feelings for her? Chu Liuchen stretched out his slender fingers and flicked Xiao Wenru's forehead, which was still a little dull and painful. Ouch! Xiao Wenru felt that she was awakened by the pain. All the blurry scenes in her mind disappeared, and she recovered her clear memory. She reached out to cover her aching head, raised her eyes, and looked at Chu Liuchen. "Your Highness, why are you here at this time?" Huaguang Temple was not a place that anyone could come to. If it was so easy for someone to sneak in, it could not be called a royal temple. It was said that there were martial monks with high martial arts skills in Huaguang Temple who guarded the safety of the temple. It was very difficult for someone to sneak into Huaguang Temple. If it were not for their strong strength, how could the royal family dare to cultivate in seclusion here? This had been a royal temple for generations, and it had a long history. Huaguang Temple was not loyal to the royal family of any dynasty, but only to the person who ascended to the throne. This was also the reason why Huaguang Temple had been enduring for hundreds of years. "Of course, I also live here to cultivate in seclusion," Chu Liuchen said naturally. "Your Highness, you also come here to cultivate in seclusion. Why didn't I know?" Xiao Wenru asked in astonishment, and her watery eyes blinked twice. She really felt strange. If Chu Liuchen also came to Huaguang Temple, it should be a grand event. How could he come here quietly? "I'm not in good health, so I can't come here at will. I only brought a few people to live here," Chu Liuchen said leisurely with a smile flashing in his eyes. "Where do you live, Your Highness?" Xiao Wenru suddenly had a very bad premonition. "Of course, next door to you," Chu Liuchen said casually, reaching out to play with her hair scattered on the pillow. Xiao Wenru didn't like to tie her hair up when she slept, so she always let her hair down like this. Her smooth hair was wrapped around her fingers, and it was soft with indescribable delicacy. The moonlight shone in through the half-open window, and it was hazy with some indescribable feeling. The two of them suddenly stopped talking, and the air was filled with an indescribable atmosphere. Xiao Wenru blushed inexplicably. She didn't turn her head, but she could sense that Chu Liuchen, who was next to her, seemed to be looking at her. At this time, she was glad that it was dark, and she could naturally hide it a little in the dark, but the temperature was unnaturally high and a little hot. "Your Highness, why don't you go back?" Xiao Wenru, who was stiff all over and really uncomfortable, moved her feet under the quilt and said, "It's getting late. I slept too much during the day, so I can't fall asleep now, so I want to come over and talk to you." Chu Liuchen said casually, "I heard that you made a lot of trouble before, and Xiao Yenru has been pestering you. She should go back soon. Is it going to be the beauty selection?" Hearing that Xiao Yenru was mentioned, the blush on Xiao Wenru's face slowly faded and her watery eyes flickered. In the darkness, there was a quiet look in her eyes, which was particularly beautiful. "It's going to be the beauty selection, but it's not urgent. You still have to wait for a while, after the spring festival," Chu Liuchen said leisurely. He meant that Xiao Wenru was also going to participate in the beauty selection, which was also expected by Xiao Wenru. When Chu Luchun used her as a shield, the Empress Dowager also agreed that she was going to marry into Prince Chen's mansion, but after all, it had not been officially announced, so not many people knew it. Now that there was going to be a beauty selection, of course, she had to go through the formalities. Otherwise, others would say that the emperor was partial to his two sons and didn't care so much about his nephews. Everyone would choose the beauties from the beauty selection and then give them to the princes, so as to stop people in the world from gossiping. An ordinary nephew would be criticized for being unfair, let alone Chu Liuchun's nephew, who had always been special. Prince Yu, Prince Zhou Yu, and Commandery Prince Qing? Xiao Wanru thought carefully and asked. In the last life, she remembered that Prince Xian's marriage was a little late, which should be because he was young. Chu Liuxin originally looked like a child. Although he was a little older than Xiao Wanru just felt that Prince Xian was very childish. He only did things with courage, without planning. Chu Liuxin will also choose, but Consort Ming may think too highly of herself, so she may not be able to choose anyone. Chu Luchun played with Xiao Wanru's beautiful hair with his fingers and said casually. Chu Liuxin's mother, Consort Ming, was also an ambitious woman. In the last life, it could be said that Chu Liuxin's tragedy was caused by Consort Ming. Since she was ambitious, she naturally had to choose a marriage that would help her son. It was not so easy to choose a daughter-in-law. But this time, Prince Yu, Prince Zhou, and Chu Luchun were chosen together. Prince Yu's mother was Consort De. Although they were both consorts, Consort De was the head of the four consorts, which Consort Ming couldn't compare with. Prince Zhou was the legitimate son of the Empress, not to mention that even Chu Luchun had the protection of the Empress Dowager and the Emperor. He could also choose the marriage. It was Prince Xian's turn to choose the last one. Consort Ming would never be satisfied with the leftovers. In addition, Chu Liuxin was really a little young, so it was okay to put it off for another 3 years. Of course, she would certainly not say this. She would definitely choose with others seriously. In the end, it didn't matter if she didn't choose the right one. The youngest prince would originally be treated with some care, and this one didn't seem to grow up. What? Are you worried that you can't marry into my mansion? Don't worry, the position of my princess is naturally reserved for you. Chu Luchun said with a smile, looking lazy and casual. In the darkness, Xiao Wanru's face became a little uneasy. Your Highness, since I promised you, I will naturally be your shield. The princess consort was the best target to block all the arrows. It's good that you remember it. Take good care of yourself first. After the spring festival, I will live next door to you now. If you need anything, ask Qing, or to come over and call me. Chu Luchun turned his head to look at Xiao Wanru. In the darkness, he only saw a pair of watery eyes. Under her black hair, there was a little bit of delicate ignorance. He gently patted her slender body and slowly got up, with a faint smile on his handsome lips. Seeing him get up, Xiao Wanru also sat up. As soon as she sat up, he pressed her down and said in a lazy voice with a little teasing tone, "Don't get up now. After you marry me in the future, you can wait on me to get up in the morning." After saying that, he reached out his hand frivolously and pinched her face. Then he narrowed his strange eyes and didn't embarrass her anymore. He turned around and strode away in a good mood. Then, under Xiao Wanru's stunned gaze, he opened her door openly, closed it for her, and walked out in a dignified manner. Didn't he come in through the window? Xiao Wanru almost stared blankly at him leaving. Could he be more presumptuous? Chapter 631. Xiao Yanru got up early in the morning and went to the hall closest to Xiao Wanru with Shuqi to worship the Buddha. After staying there for a long time, she got up and walked out. This was the place where Xiao Yanru had been stopped by the reception monk in the temple. If she went any closer, she would not be allowed to get close to Xiao Wanru. As usual, she sat and rested in the pavilion beside the hall and did not leave. During this period of time, she had been waiting here very patiently. She could see Xiao Wanru's courtyard from a distance. If someone came from Xiao Wanru's courtyard, she would see it immediately. If they didn't cross the boundary, the monks in the temple turned a blind eye to it. In order to keep a closer eye on Xiao Wanru, Xiao Yanru even casually ate some pastries for lunch and waited for a longer time. This was close to the courtyard of the royal family, so ordinary people were not allowed to come here. Xiao Yanru usually sat there for a long time and did not see anyone except the monks in the temple. However, it was different today. Xiao Yanru saw someone coming from a distance and hurriedly sat up straight. When she got closer, she found that the person surrounded by the group of people was Commandery Prince Chu Qing. Greatly disappointed, she lowered her head slightly and tried to pretend that she didn't see it. Unexpectedly, Chu Qing saw her and came to her pavilion with a group of people. When he arrived at the side of the pavilion, he waved his hand, and a few attendants stood guard outside the pavilion. First, Miss Xiao. Chu Qing came in politely and bowed deeply to Xiao Yanru with a smile. Xiao Yanru hurriedly stood up to return the bow. First, Miss Xiao, what are you doing here? Chu Qing asked with a smile and naturally sat down on the stone bench opposite Xiao Yanru. When he enjoyed the scenery in the Yuhui nunnery last time, the wind blew up the veil, so Chu Qing had already seen Xiao Yanru's real face. Fifth sister lives inside. I want to see her. Xiao Yanru sighed and said softly. Then she also sat down in the face of Chu Qing's smile. Then why don't you go over? Chu Qing asked in surprise. The monks in the temple said that fifth sister is recuperating and cannot be disturbed. Looking at Commandery Prince Qing in front of her, an idea suddenly came to Xiao Yanru's mind. She smiled more gently and helplessly. With a bitter look on her beautiful face, it could be seen that she was extremely sad. Grandma is worried about my fifth sister's health, so she asked me to come here to have a look. But if I can't see my fifth sister and prove that she is fine, how can I go back and report it to Grandma? So the eldest miss is waiting here? Commandery Prince Qing said unhappily. How can you be so rude, fifth miss? Since she can cultivate in seclusion, she can also meet people. How can you punish her like this? It just so happens that Ben Wang wants to go in. Can you pass on your message to fifth miss? Thank you, Commandery Prince Qing. Xiao Yanru was overjoyed. She stood up excitedly and bowed deeply to Commandery Prince Qing again. Chu Qing's arrival was a pleasant surprise. As long as she passed on her message to Xiao Wanru, she didn't believe that Xiao Wanru could refuse to see her. It was one thing that Xiao Wanru didn't know that she was here, but it would be Xiao Wanru's fault if she deliberately refused to see her after knowing it. Moreover, she had mentioned her grandma. With her grandma's order, if Xiao Wanru knew that she refused to see her after knowing it, it would be unfilial. Filial piety was more important than anything. She didn't believe that Xiao Wanru dared to disobey her. It didn't matter if Xiao Wanru really disobeyed her. With this matter, she could make others suspect that Xiao Wanru's so-called filial piety was superficial. She treated a living elder like this, let alone a dead elder. With the deliberate promotion of Xiao Wanru's filial piety in the past, all of them could not be true, and her reputation could also be cleared by this. Don't thank me. It's not a big deal. First miss, please wait here. I'll be back soon. Chu Qing really didn't think it was a big deal. He stood up and said generously. It couldn't be a better thing to win the first Miss Xiao's heart with this. He wanted to know the strength of Duke Xing's mansion very much. If he could win the first Miss Xiao's heart, he would not only get to hug a beauty, but also get the support of Duke Xing's mansion. It was really a rare thing. Even if he wanted to, it was not convenient for him to go to Duke Xing's mansion. After all, he didn't have a good relationship with Duke Xing. Although he dealt with the old fox with a smile when he met him in the imperial court, the old fox was also stubborn and indifferent. He didn't know where to start. It was great that Xiao Yanru came to him. Since the consort selection was coming, he had to plan for himself. Thank you, Commandery Prince Qing. Xiao Yanru thanked him again in a sweet voice, and then her face was full of expectation. With such a beauty, Chu Qing, of course, was in high spirits. He led a group of people to Xiao Wanru's courtyard. Xiao Yanru watched from a distance. Chu Qing came to visit Chu Luqian today. He had always wanted to visit Chu Luqian in the past, but it was often not the right time. Chu Luqian was either taking medicine or seeing a doctor. If Chu Luqian said that he had just fallen asleep and it was inconvenient to wake him up, he had been to Prince Chen's mansion several times, but he was rejected every time with good reasons. It made Chu Qing feel aggrieved and angry. Later, he wanted to go back with Chu Luchen in the imperial court. Unexpectedly, Chu Luchen gently said that he would go to the Empress Dowager's palace to take medicine. Then he returned to the imperial court. The Empress Dowager had always been indifferent to him, so he didn't dare to go to the imperial court to see the Empress Dowager casually. So his plan failed. It was not easy for him to find out that Chu Luchen came to Huaguang Temple to cultivate in seclusion this time. It was late yesterday, so he got up early this morning sincerely and came to visit Chu Luchen with a group of people. The reception monk brought him here and led him to Chu Liuchen's courtyard. When they arrived at the gate of the courtyard, Chu Qing waved to the reception monk, who put his palms together and left. After learning that the reception monk had left, Chu Qing turned around and walked to the courtyard next to him. Just now, Xiao Yanru had told him clearly that the courtyard next to him was the courtyard where Xiao Wanru cultivated in seclusion. When he arrived at the door, Chu Qing put his hands behind his back and asked the servant to knock on the door. But no matter how hard he knocked, the door was tightly closed and refused to open. Xiao Wanru, who was in the room, had already gotten up. She walked to the window and looked at the door of the courtyard, which was knocked loudly. Her long eyelashes fluttered twice. She had already known that the person outside was Commandery Prince Qing, Chu Qing. Just now, Qing had told her that she saw Chu Qing and Xiao Yanru talking and laughing in the pavilion in the distance and looking very intimate. Of course, Qing also told Xiao Wanru that Chu Luchen had his own way to deal with it. She just needed to have a good rest inside and ignore what was going on outside. Come on, climb over the wall and open the door. Seeing that the door had not been opened, as if there was no one inside and no one even asked about it, Chu Qing became displeased. The beauty in the distance was still watching him. If the door of the courtyard had not been opened, it would be a slap in his face. Yes. A guard took 2 steps forward and jumped onto the wall. When he was about to jump into the courtyard, he suddenly saw a guard appear on the wall next to him. The guard pointed the long sword in his hand and stabbed the chest of the guard of Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. The guard of Prince Qing's mansion also reacted quickly. He hurriedly jumped off the wall and pulled out the long sword in his hand. The guard who appeared on the wall later also jumped down, and the two of them were engaged in a fierce fight. Seeing that the situation was not good, the guards around Chu Qing all pulled out their swords. Some of them stood in front of Chu Qing, while others joined the fight. For a moment, the fight was very lively. Although the guard who jumped down from the wall later had extraordinary skills, he couldn't resist so many people. After being stabbed a few times, he turned over and fell to the ground. He was captured. Who are you? Why do you want to assassinate me? Surrounded by several guards, Chu Qing came to the guard who was captured and said with an unkind look, "Assassinate you? Prince Qing, you are really proud of yourself. You have so many guards to deal with one of my guards, and you want to climb over the wall in vain? Huaguang Temple is not the Yuhui nunnery. You can't be presumptuous here." A cold voice came from beside him, suppressing Chu Qing's voice. Chu Qing looked back in a hurry, only to see that the door of the courtyard beside him was wide open. Chu Luchen appeared there with a group of guards, and his handsome face was cold. "Big brother, I'm not." Chu Qing had a bad feeling in his heart and hurriedly explained. "Call me Prince Chen." Chu Luchen sneered and walked over slowly with the corners of his mouth slightly curled up. A gust of evil qi made the guards following Chu Qing involuntarily take a step back. "Prince Chen, I have something to talk to 5th Miss Xiao. I didn't mean to offend her, and I didn't know that this guard was Prince Chen's subordinate." Chu Qing didn't dare to argue. He waved his hand to let his guards leave and explained. "Looking for 5th Miss Xiao? Why didn't I know that you had a relationship with 5th Miss Xiao?" Chu Luchen said coldly, glanced at Chu Qing with disdain, and then turned to look at Xiao Yanru in the pavilion in the distance with contempt. "Did the 1st Miss of Duke Xing's mansion ask you to come here?" "Yes, 1st Miss Xiao asked me to pass a message to 5th Miss Xiao." Chu Qing said aggrievedly and clenched his fists hard. He didn't have the strength to fight against Chu Luchen now, and he even had to please Chu Luchen. This kind of feeling was very unreconciled. They were both the sons of the late emperor. Why should he be inferior to Chu Luchen? His body was much better than Chu Liuchen's, and he was not a patient. A little more. What's the relationship between Commandery Prince Qing and Miss Xiao? They actually made an appointment here early, and then Commandery Prince Qing came to disturb my cousin. Great-aunt once told me to take good care of my cousin and not let those ignorant people offend my cousin. As expected, I met them only one day after I came here. Chu Luchen stared at Chu Qing's face gloomily. The feeling of being stared at by a ghost made Chu Qing take a step back uneasily. When he realized it, he was furious. How could Chu Luchen scare him away? Prince Chen, First Miss and Fifth Miss are sisters. It's not a big deal for her to pass on a message for you. Suppressing the jealousy in his heart, Chu Qing said with a flattering smile and clenched his fists tightly under his sleeves. It was okay for others to look down on him, but such a precarious patient also looked down on him and even forced him to retreat in an astonishing manner. How could he not be furious? In order to please a beauty, Commandery Prince Qing naturally doesn't think it's a big deal. He is even willing to go against the will of heaven and filial piety to disturb my cousin's quiet cultivation. I wonder what it is about. You are indeed the first beauty in the capital city. You are really charming. I wish Commandery Prince Qing that you can hug your beauty and have your wish come true. After Chu Luchen finished speaking, he turned around and entered the courtyard with a group of people. He ignored Chu Qing and directly left him here. Chapter 632. Looking at Chu Liuchen's back, Chu Qing's face turned livid and pale. He was ashamed and annoyed and felt that he had lost all his face today. In the current situation, he couldn't ask to see Chu Luchen anymore. Even if he asked to see him, he would definitely refuse to see him. Chu Luchen had always been arrogant and arbitrary. Your Highness. Seeing him standing there in a daze, a guard reminded him in a low voice. Let's go. Chu Qing gritted his teeth, suppressed his anger and said. Then he turned around and strode away. Seeing the scene here from a distance, Xiao Yanru also saw Chu Luchen and Chu Qing returning in vain. She was angry and annoyed. Why was Chu Luchen here? When did he come? Why did he live in the courtyard next to Xiao Wanru's? Although this courtyard was prepared for the royal family in the past, there should be other courtyards, right? She had intended to find a loophole in Xiao Wanru's courtyard and was ready to find a way to break in. But now Chu Luchen appeared, so she knew that no matter what she thought, she might not be able to do it. Seeing Chu Qing coming over, she forced a smile on her face and greeted him in a sweet voice, Commandery Prince Qing. She looked at Chu Qing expectantly. At this time, Chu Qing had calmed down and even showed a gentle smile on his face. Seeing Xiao Yanru salute him, he helped her up politely. First Miss, I'm really sorry. Just now, Prince Chen told me that Fifth Miss Xiao was seriously injured and could only rest quietly every day. When she was tired, she would copy scriptures. It's really inconvenient to disturb her. Chu Qing said with a smile and an apologetic look. It's not convenient for me to disturb Fifth Miss Xiao this time. Why don't you come again after a while? Can't I really see her? I just want to see my fifth sister. Even if I don't say anything, I just want to see her. Xiao Yanru burst into tears. A beauty with tears was the most pitiful. What was more, Xiao Yanru deliberately made herself look more gentle. Such a beauty really made people feel sorry for her and couldn't help but want to hold her in his arms and comfort her. Chu Qing was also very willing to do so, but when he thought of the devil living next to Fifth Miss Xiao's courtyard, he immediately felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured on him and made his heart turn cold. First Miss Xiao, I'm really sorry. Chu Qing didn't dare to take charge this time. It was really not worthwhile to make Chu Luchen unhappy for the sake of Xiao Yanru. Thank you, Commandery Prince Qing. Sorry to trouble you, Xiao Yanru said in a daze. Since Fifth Miss Xiao is cultivating in seclusion, you'd better go down the mountain, First Miss Xiao. At the foot of the mountain, there are all kinds of rumors that are extremely disadvantageous to you. Chu Qing said softly with gentle eyes. He didn't care about Xiao Yanru's reputation very much. He even felt that Xiao Yanru's bad reputation was beneficial to him. He only needed to get the help of Duke Xing's mansion. However, Duke Xing's mansion was a great help after all, and many people liked it. If Xiao Yanru's reputation was good, how could he covet it? Commander Prince Qing was very clear about his current situation. He knew that he was in an awkward situation now. If he wanted to do something, he needed more strength. Although reputation was important, it was not as important as power. It was the best choice for him to marry a princess with a bad reputation but reliable power. Xiao Yanru met this requirement now. He was afraid that Duke Xing's mansion would look down on him, so he deliberately ridiculed Xiao Yanru. Xiao Yanru blushed and bit the corner of her lip hard to suppress the anger rolling in her heart. She said aggrievedly, "Thank you for telling me, Commander Prince Qing. I'm indeed going down the mountain. As for those rumors, they are just rumors. It's reasonable for Fifth Sister to be suspected after such a thing happened to her. It doesn't matter. When the Fifth Miss recovers, she will explain it for you. First Miss, you are so kind. How could you be such a vicious person?" Chu Qing comforted her. "Thank you for trusting me, Commander Prince Qing." Xiao Yanru said gratefully with tears in her eyes. "Who doesn't trust you, First Miss?" Chu Qing said with an increasingly gentle tone. With a hint of passion in his eyes that Xiao Yanru could understand, he invited, "First Miss Xiao, let's go, shall we?" Xiao Yanru glanced at Xiao Wanru's courtyard and knew that it was useless for her to stay, so she could only turn around and leave. Soon after, Xiao Wanru got the news that Xiao Yanru had gone down the mountain and returned. Without Xiao Yanru keeping a close eye on her outside, her courtyard was much more relaxed than before. It was quiet in this area, so few people would come here. The two people living here were both sick and delicate. Huaguang Temple became quieter and quieter. Xiao Wanru sat in front of the stone table in the courtyard, picked up a book and read it casually. Several maids were leisurely picking up the falling maple leaves and felt that they lived a very leisurely life. The courtyard next to her was very quiet, as if no one lived there. If she didn't know that Chu Luchen had indeed moved in, she definitely wouldn't have guessed that there was someone inside. Especially when this person appeared at the gate of the courtyard leisurely, Xiao Wanru was extremely speechless and asked Yu Jie to welcome him in. "Come in. I'll show you something good." Chu Luchen walked to Xiao Wanru's side in a good mood and said. Then he went to the main room. Xiao Wanru looked helplessly at him, who seemed to be more like a master than her. After entering the room, Chu Luchen put something in his hand on the table. Xiao Wanru leaned over to take a look and immediately looked at Chu Luchen speechlessly. Was this a bracelet? It was a pair of gold bracelets, which looked very heavy. No, it couldn't be said to be heavy. It should be said that such heavy gold bracelets were extremely heavy. Of course, such heavy gold bracelets were not the kind that could be worn in daily life. They were usually used as a collection and basically wouldn't be used. The most important thing was its value. It was a pair of pure gold bracelets, which were very solid without any patterns. As a pair of solid bracelets, they looked very rough. This style was completely different from Chu Liuchen's style. Xiao Wanru never expected that he would take out such a pair of gold bracelets. This kind of honest style was so honest that people couldn't figure it out. "How is it?" Chu Luchen asked in a good mood. He sat down on the wide chair where she used to sit and narrowed his long and narrow beautiful eyes slightly. Being looked at by him in this way, Xiao Wanru immediately became spirited and hurriedly said, "Excellent, excellent. Where did you find such a pair of gold bracelets, Your Highness? I have never seen such a solid gold bracelet." "It's a gift for you." Chu Luchen waved his hand and said. What's the use of this?" Xiao Wanru asked in confusion. "Of course it's for wearing." Chu Luchen squinted at her, reached out to hold one of her hands, and reached for the bracelet with the other hand. The heavy strength under his hand made his hand sink, while the other soft little hand was almost weightless in his palm. His hand couldn't help but stop, and he looked at the gold bracelet in his hand with some confusion. For the first time, he wondered if he had taken the wrong one. "This doesn't seem to be for wearing, does it?" he said in an extremely low voice, and he was originally talking to himself. Xiao Wanru couldn't help laughing. It was rare to see Chu Luchen in such a dilemma, and this prince had never been a person who was in a dilemma. Your Highness, this should be a collection. It's impossible for anyone to wear such a solid bracelet. This kind of bracelet was more like a collection, which was easier to hide and use as a collection like gold bars and gold bricks. Chu Luchen sat up straight, put down Xiao Wanru's hand, narrowed his eyes, and looked at the bracelet twice with a strange and cold look in his eyes. Xiao Wanru stood up, poured a cup of tea for him, and put it in front of him. Chu Luchen reached out to take it and took a sip. His attention was still on the gold bracelet, and he seemed to be thinking about something. It was used as a collection, and it was not easy to find out that it was a special collection than gold bars and gold bricks. Then was the place he found a treasure? I'll go and have a look. After putting down the teacup, Chu Luchen stood up and said thoughtfully. He had thought that it was just a pair of rare gold bracelets, but he didn't expect that there was something special, which was a surprise. Your Highness, please go ahead. Xiao Wanru nodded. Knowing that he must have remembered it, she stood up and saw him off. After seeing him off at the gate of the courtyard and seeing him leave, she returned to the room, picked up the writing brush, and began to copy the scriptures. She did have a lot of scriptures to copy. The lunch was also very simple. Xiao Wanru had a light diet, and she had been a vegetarian on the mountain for 3 years. After eating a little, she put down the writing brush and went to take a nap under Yu Jie's persuasion. Unexpectedly, not long after she fell asleep, she suddenly heard someone calling her. She opened her eyes in a hurry, looked at Qing, who looked nervous, and asked, "Miss, Xiao Xuanzi asked you to pretend to be a prince." "His Highness Prince Qing is here." Gasped and said with sweat all over her face. "Prince Qing?" Xiao Wanru, who had just woken up, sat up, and was still a little slow to react. Qing reached out to help Xiao Wanru get up and said, "Yes, your Highness has gone out, but we can't let others know about it." However, at this time, Prince Qing came and said that he wanted to see your Highness. Xiao Xuanzi was so anxious that he wanted you to pretend to be a prince in bed and fool Prince Qing over. But Xiao Wanru heard Qing's words clearly at this time. She was so scared that she immediately woke up and said in surprise, "Has Prince Qing come?" "Not yet. He's on the way here. I'll take you there first," Qing said anxiously. But Xiao Wanru nodded, took a coat at random and put it on. Seeing a few sachets on the table, among which a red peony was particularly eye-catching, something seemed to flash across her mind. She took the sachet in her hand, followed Qing to the courtyard, and asked Qing to take her over the wall. As soon as she passed the wall, she saw Xiao Xuanzi, who was wandering in the courtyard. At the sight of Xiao Wanru, he was so excited that he came up and bowed to Xiao Wanru. After that, he went to the main room and said in a low voice, "We can't let others know that the prince is going out. The prince is not here, and it's inconvenient for the guards to pretend to be him for fear of exposing themselves. So I want to ask the 5th Miss to come over." So he was not afraid of exposing himself. But it was not the time for her to say such words. If she had doubts, she would talk about it later. Moreover, she felt that she was suitable. Helped her lie on the bed, and she asked her to hang the sachet in her hand. Then the curtain was drawn down. The whole room was filled with a strong smell of medicine. At the first smell, it was obvious that this was the patient's room. Of course, this was the worst plan. It would be the best if they could stop Prince Qing outside. There were certainly not many guards left, but they had to pretend that Chu Luchen was in the room and was protected by many guards. The remaining guards had to go to the main room. This was also the reason why they had to ask for help. Xiao Wanru only hoped that she would not be needed in the end. She had a feeling that Prince Qing came with ill intentions, but why did she have such a strange feeling? Chapter 633. Prince Cheng's appearance in Huaguang Temple was actually an accident. He did come to Huaguang Temple for something, but after he arrived at Huaguang Temple, he received a strange letter. The letter said that Chu Luchen went to Huaguang Temple to recuperate, which was false. In fact, he had another secret plot. The one who conspired with him was Commandery Prince Qing, Chu Qing. They were brothers. Although the emperor gave Chu Luchen the ranking of princes, which was equivalent to recognizing him as his son, and he could also call him son, in front of the emperor, he was not the emperor's biological son after all. In fact, he was the biological son of Chu Qing. What were they secretly plotting? In fact, it was very easy to guess. The letter said that if Prince Cheng did not believe it, he could go to the place where Chu Luchen recuperated to have a look. At this time, he must not be there. Prince Cheng was dubious about this letter. After thinking about it, he decided to go there. If he did not find anything unusual, it meant that this letter was deceptive. If he found something unusual, it meant that Chu Luchen was deceptive. He did not know what Chu Luchen was doing. No matter how hard Chu Luchen was suffering, it was impossible for him to suffer. But no matter what, with doubts in his heart, Prince Cheng came to visit with a group of people. The place where Prince Cheng lived was also some distance from here. When he came over, he saw 2 guards guarding at the door. Seeing him, the 2 guards hurriedly came forward and saluted, "Greetings, Prince Cheng." "Where is your prince?" Prince Cheng asked with a smile. "Our prince is inside. Tell him that I'm here." Prince Cheng nodded. A guard turned to report. After a while, he saw Xiao Xuanzi running out with a smile. Before he came close, he had already said cheerfully, "Your Highness, I'm here to pay my respects to you." Prince Cheng waved his sleeves and asked, "What is your prince doing now?" "Our prince just took the medicine and fell asleep." "Your Highness, please," Xiao Xuanzi said with a smile as he welcomed Prince Cheng inside. "Since he has fallen asleep, how can I disturb him?" Prince Cheng took 2 steps and stopped. In the past, he liked to live in the temples and did not care about the affairs of his nephews in the palace. When he went down the mountain, he just went to the palace to see the Empress Dowager and was not close to other royal families. Our master is sick for 8 or 9 days out of 10. If you come to visit him, you can go in and have a look. If you wait for our master to wake up, it will be a waste of time. Your Highness Prince Cheng, please. Xiao Xuanzi continued to invite him in with enthusiasm. Everyone knew that Chu Luchen was in poor health, and there were indeed people who came to visit him from time to time. Of course, not everyone could go in and have a look. Many people couldn't even enter Prince Chen's mansion. "You just took the medicine?" Prince Cheng nodded with joy. He asked the others to guard outside the door and followed Xiao Xuanzi inside. "Yes, he just took the medicine and didn't take much. Maybe he will wake up in a while. Our master often wakes up and doesn't sleep well. If he has a good sleep, he may get better." Xiao Xuanzi said with a lot of worries, "Recently, our master's sleep is much better than before." "It's worse than before?" Prince Cheng frowned. "Yes, it's worse than before. In the past, when our master fell asleep, he could never make a sound. If he was disturbed, he would be severely punished. Once in the palace, an ignorant person woke up our master. The Empress Dowager was so angry that she almost killed that family." Xiao Xuanzi said. "A family? Not a servant in the palace?" Prince Cheng asked curiously. "Of course not. He came to the palace to visit the Empress Dowager, but he came to find our master. In fact, he was unlucky. That day, our master was not feeling well and finally fell asleep. When he was woken up by someone, he was so uncomfortable that he even spat out the medicine. How could the Empress Dowager not be angry? You know, the Empress Dowager is most worried about our master's health." Xiao Xuanzi led Prince Cheng to the main room. While chatting, he said with a smile, "Your Highness Prince Cheng, here are the steps. Please be careful." Prince Cheng nodded and went up the steps. There were also 2 guards standing in the main room. When they saw them coming, they hurriedly lifted the curtain. "Your Highness Prince Cheng, please." When Xiao Xuanzi entered the room, he lowered his voice more than an octave. There was no difference between the inside and outside of the room. However, the smile on his face did not change, and he still led Prince Cheng in enthusiastically. Prince Cheng stepped in and looked at the decoration in the room. Although the quiet places of Buddhism were mainly elegant, it could be seen that the decoration in the room was both elegant and valuable. It was much better than the decoration in the courtyard where he lived. Obviously, Prince Cheng paid more attention to it. He used to come to the Huaguang Temple. The courtyard there was originally chosen by him. There were many courtyards prepared for the royal family and they were distributed in different positions. Only that one was not the most luxurious and could be regarded as the most inconspicuous one among the royal courtyards. What Prince Cheng wanted was this inconspicuous one. Before many things were clear, he hoped to avoid all the attention, not to let the emperor notice him, and not to let the officials notice him. Now he was just a cultivator with hair who wanted to be a monk and even did not want to get married. For a cultivator like him, he should be able to look at everything lightly and lightly. What on earth does that letter mean? She looked at Xiao Xuanzi's flattering and affectionate smiling face. It seemed that all eunuchs had the same expression. For a moment, she really couldn't see anything different. He continued to walk in. On the bed behind the screen, Xiao Wanru's heart was also in her throat. She felt that almost every step of Prince Cheng's footsteps was stepping on her heart. She pressed her chest with one hand, closed her eyes tightly, and didn't dare to move at all. She only felt that her heart was beating like a drum. She bit her lip hard to suppress her rapid breathing. She couldn't help clenching her fists in the quilt. "Your Highness Prince Cheng, please." Xiao Xuanzi's flattering voice was in her ear. His voice was very low but affectionate and relaxed. His footsteps were also very light. Obviously, he was afraid of disturbing the person on the bed. Afraid of disturbing the person on the bed? Xiao Wanru's eyes suddenly lit up. She seemed to think of something and slightly relaxed her body. Her long eyelashes fluttered, her eyes closed tightly, and only her ears paid attention to the sound outside. The footsteps were indeed very light, but there was more than one footstep. Prince Cheng really came. Prince Cheng followed Xiao Xuanzi around the screen and entered the inner room. His eyes immediately fell on the red sachet hanging on the gauze curtain at the head of the bed. Among the plain decorations in the room, this bright red was hard to ignore. It was such a rich color, and it was such a rich peony. It was so beautiful that it was eye-catching. Prince Cheng's hands suddenly trembled, his eyes slightly twitched, and his face slightly darkened. Why is there such a vulgar sachet hanging on the head of the bed of Prince Chen? This is a quiet place of Buddhism. His voice was not high, but it could be heard that he was very angry. Xiao Wanru, who was lying on the bed, stretched her ears. In fact, she was also curious about this matter. It seemed that Prince Cheng really didn't like this bright red sachet. Xiao Xuanzi also saw the sachet hanging on the head of the bed. After thinking for a while, he figured it out. He secretly thought that Fifth Miss Xiao was really smart. He smiled and lowered his voice to a very low voice. He approached Prince Cheng and whispered, "Your Highness Prince Cheng, this sachet was sent by the Empress Dowager to ward off evil spirits. It is said that this bright red sachet can suppress evil spirits. Then why is it made into a sachet and hung with the image of a peony?" Hearing that it was the order of the Empress Dowager, the coldness on Prince Cheng's face faded a little. Although he still looked unfriendly, he still asked in a low voice. "It is said that it is made into a sachet for easy hanging, but it is a little ugly to hang a red cloth. As for the peony, it should also be for the sake of looking good, right?" Xiao Xuanzi reached out to touch his head and explained in confusion, indicating that he didn't know about this matter. Since it was the order of the Empress Dowager, it was naturally inconvenient for Xiao Xuanzi to ask more. However, it seemed that he had asked, but he didn't get any answer. Of course, he couldn't ask the Empress Dowager's people casually. Even Chu Luchen, the favored grandson, might not be able to get all the answers. It was very real. Prince Cheng moved his eyes from the bright red sachet with difficulty and then fell on the bed. There was a faint figure in the gauze curtain, and it could be seen that someone was sleeping on the bed. "Your Highness, let me lift the gauze curtain for you. Please take a look and don't wake up my master, okay?" Xiao Xuanzi said with a smile, but there was a little bitterness on his face. He lowered his voice and looked at Prince Cheng imploringly. Xiao Wanru, who was lying on the bed, couldn't help but feel her heart beating wildly at this time. If she was covered with a quilt, she, a fake, might not be able to see through it. However, if Prince Cheng lifted the quilt a little or checked her when he was tidying the quilt for her, he would definitely find out that she was a fake. She was lying on her side and facing inside, and the quilt was not tightly covered. In addition to her hair, half of her face was also exposed. As long as Prince Chung looked inside a little, he would definitely find out that she was not Chu Luchin. At that time, not only Chu Luchin couldn't explain it, but she also couldn't explain it. However, in the current situation, all she could do was to grit her teeth and hold on. It depended on who could hold on to the end, her or Prince Cheng. Gritting her teeth, Xiao Wanru also threw caution to the wind and didn't think about anything. Only when she didn't think about anything could she be really calm. Her slightly trembling hands actually calmed down. Prince Cheng nodded and looked at the bright red sachet hanging on the gauze curtain with disgust again. Instead of moving forward, he took a step back. Xiao Xuanzi stepped forward and lifted half of the gauze curtain, revealing the figure lying on the bed. She didn't cover her head with the quilt. Half of her face was exposed and facing inside. Under her long black hair, there was white and tender skin. At this time, she was breathing steadily and sleeping there, not being disturbed by the movement above. "Your Highness, you haven't seen my master for a long time, right? Do you want to come over and have a look?" Xiao Xuanzi lowered his voice and invited Prince Cheng as he lifted the gauze curtain. This was originally an idea that Prince Cheng had thought of after entering the room. He really wanted to see if the person on the bed was Chu Luchin, so that he could solve the doubts in his heart. At this time, Xiao Xuanzi unexpectedly interrupted him, which made him frown slightly. He looked up at the bright red sachet hanging on the gauze curtain and stepped out. Chapter 634. No, it's good that your master is fine. Put it down. Be careful not to let him catch a cold. Prince Cheng suddenly smiled and said softly. Then he retreated with light steps with joy. Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly put down the gauze curtain and chased after him quietly. When he got to the door and saw Prince Cheng standing in the corridor with his hands clasped behind his back, he stepped forward with a smile and said, "Your Highness, has your master been eating well these days? Has he slept well?" Prince Cheng did have something to ask Xiao Xuanzi. Hearing the light footsteps behind him, he knew that Xiao Xuanzi had come out, so he asked. "My master has been fine these days. His condition is much better than before. He won't faint easily. Commandery Prince Qing has also been here before," Xiao Xuanzi said with a smile and a fawning look as usual. "Has Commandery Prince Qing come here?" Prince Cheng asked casually with the same expression on his face. "Yesterday, Commandery Prince Qing said that he and our master were brothers, so they should get close to each other. However, our master didn't like Commandery Prince Qing very much, so he didn't let him enter the courtyard. When they met outside the courtyard, he sent Commandery Prince Qing back. At that time, the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion was also there." Xiao Xuanzi thought for a while and answered. "Did the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion also come to see your master?" Prince Qing asked. "Of course not. The first Miss Xiao came with Commandery Prince Qing. Because of her identity, she waited outside. Commandery Prince Qing came here first. Later, after he was driven away by our master, he went down the mountain with the first Miss Xiao." Xiao Xuanzi said carefully. It was true. The first Miss Xiao waited in the pavilion outside. When Commandery Prince Qing came in and knocked on the fifth Miss Xiao's door, he was sent away by his master. After that, Commandery Prince Qing went back and left with the first Miss Xiao. However, the most important thing was Xiao Wanru. Hearing Xiao Xuanzi's words, it sounded as if Chu Qing and Xiao Yanru had made an appointment to come and then left together. When did Xiao Yanru get so close to Chu Qing? Prince Cheng frowned calmly and was very dissatisfied with Duke Xing. He slightly bent the corners of his mouth and said, "In this case, you should serve your master well. If there is anything wrong, come and report to me. I will also live in Huaguang Temple during this period and will listen to scriptures for a period of time in Huaguang Temple." He used to think that the first Miss Xiao was a smart beauty, and he might be able to use her in the future. But now he found that this woman was really fickle. No matter who it was, as long as they were related to the royal family, she didn't seem to want to let them go. She didn't know whether he had the ability or not. Did she really think that it was so easy to fool around with the descendants of the royal family? It seemed that he needed to teach Duke Xing a lesson, lest his daughter got carried away and ruined his plan. Coming out of Chu Liuchen's courtyard, Prince Cheng had been frowning tightly. He always felt that he had been schemed against today. If he really lifted the quilt this time or looked closely and suspected Chu Luchen, this matter would definitely be reported to the Empress Dowager. Although it could be said that he cared about the health of his nephew, Chu Luchen, he had been indifferent for many years. He said that he wanted to become a monk and seldom lived in Prince Cheng's mansion in the capital city. He had always been very indifferent to all the people. He was not very close to the civil and military officials, and he was even not close to the royal family. With his character, it was good enough that he came to see Chu Luchen. How could he go forward to check and verify intimately, even when the red peony sachet was hanging on the head of the bed? Others didn't know his disgust, but the Empress Dowager knew it. If he behaved abnormally, all his efforts in the past would be in vain. So this trap was aimed at him. Then who targeted him and set up such a trap? Was it Chu Luiwei, Chu Liuzhou, or the careless Chu Qing? First, a letter attracted him, and then under the attentive guidance of Xiao Xuanzi, he checked Chu Luchen. All these things reminded someone to pay attention to him. Was it because of the thing a few years ago? Was it Chu Luchen whom he met at that time? Chu Luchen even fainted because of it, so someone took advantage of it. The thing at that time was an accident, and Prince Ching had not found out the truth until now. But this kind of thing that could not be found out was not without a target, but it was not convenient for him to continue to investigate. If Prince Ching used his ability to continue to investigate, he would inevitably be discovered by others and expose himself if he dug too deep. Therefore, after he had a rough scope at that time, he did not continue to investigate. But if what happened today was related to what happened in the past, it was easy to make people think that he had other plans. The first person he had to deal with was Chu Luchen, who was like a victim of disease. Then if Chu Luchen was not well in the future, people would pay attention to him, which was not a good thing. Although it was said that Chu Luchen was a little better, it was based on the fact that he fainted from time to time before, which was different from ordinary people. If he was disturbed by him this time and something happened to him, the Empress Dowager would definitely be furious. In addition, some people with ulterior motives would say something and associate it with what had happened before. Prince Ching took a deep breath and only felt a chill on his back. He almost fell into someone's trap just now. After going back, send a generous gift to Prince Chen. Prince Cheng ordered in a cold voice, with a trace of fierceness flashing in his eyes. He must find out the person who secretly schemed against him. That letter could not appear in the hands of his people for no reason. Yes, Your Highness. After I go back, I will prepare it immediately. As soon as Shichi heard his master's words, he knew that his master was angry, so he hurriedly responded carefully. Go back to the prince's mansion at the foot of the mountain to prepare a generous gift. After that, send it up the mountain. Take advantage of this time to send a message to Duke Xing and ask him to control his daughter well. The royal family should choose a daughter with virtue. If she is not virtuous or has relations with other royal brothers, I'm afraid that she can't even get a concubine, not to mention a princess. Prince Ching said coldly. Yes, I know. Shichi hurriedly lowered his head. He had heard the conversation between Xiao Xuanzi and Prince Ching just now, so he knew why Prince Ching said that. It became quiet in the room, but Xiao Wanru still didn't dare to move for fear that Prince Ching would come back. At that time, the thing that she had tried so hard to hide would be exposed. Her eyes were still closed, but her ears were raised high, paying attention to everything outside. She sensed that the gauze curtain seemed to be lifted, but she didn't hear any footsteps. Xiao Wanru was so shocked that her hair stood on end. Did she sense it wrong? Then the edge of the bed suddenly collapsed. Someone actually sat on the bed. Xiao Wanru suddenly opened her eyes and saw a pair of handsome and tall eyes. When she saw the person in front of her clearly, Xiao Wanru breathed a sigh of relief. She felt comfortable as if she had come back to life again, and her body was no longer tightly clenched. Why are you here? Xiao Wanru let out a long sigh of relief and asked. Chu Luchen took off his shoes, reclined and said lazily, Why am I not here? This is my bed. After saying that, he squeezed Xiao Wanru into the bed and occupied more space. Then he took a cushion and leaned on it. He was wearing a light purple brocade robe with a slightly open collar and a white lapel, making him look both noble and elegant. Coupled with his exquisite appearance and shimmering eyes, he gave off an indescribable sense of handsomeness. He still looked like a person who came out of a painting, unlike anyone in this world. Such a person might only appear in a painting. When he appeared in reality, even Xiao Wanru, who was as calm as still water, felt uncomfortable, so she simply sat up. "Since you are back, Your Highness, I'll go back first." "What's the hurry? I happen to have something to tell you." Chu Luchen reached out his hand, held her slender waist, and pulled her into his arms. His voice was gentle and intoxicating. Xiao Wanru was pulled and fell on him. She subconsciously reached out to push him away, but when she saw his lazy but threatening eyes, she relaxed sensibly. It was obviously impossible to make this man behave politely. "Your Highness, what's the matter? Is it about the golden bracelet or Prince Cheng?" Xiao Wanru asked helplessly. "What's the matter, Prince Cheng?" Chu Luchen suddenly laughed and seemed to be in a good mood. "I originally thought that it had nothing to do with you, but now I think it has something to do with you." Xiao Wanru was really helpless. She had felt that there was something fishy about it before and vaguely felt that Xiao Xuanzi was too organized. When dealing with Prince Cheng, he almost seized the initiative step by step and seemed to be determined to let Prince Cheng check whether the person on the bed was Chu Luchen. Prince Cheng didn't even need to find an excuse himself. He had already prepared all the excuses and successfully made Xiao Wanru, who was lying on the bed, believe that Xiao Xuanzi must be Prince Cheng's man. Otherwise, how could he think of everything for Prince Cheng? Moreover, these reasons were all reasonable. However, Xiao Wanru was sure that Xiao Xuanzi was not Prince Cheng's man. He was Chu Liuchen's man and the most loyal one. What did he mean by saying that? Even if he was loyal, why did he let Prince Cheng check it quietly when he knew that the person on the bed was a fake? It seemed that he wanted Prince Cheng to expose his master's intention. If it weren't for Chu Liuchen's order, how could he have done it so flawlessly and fearlessly? Moreover, Chu Liuchen's return was too coincidental. Not only was it coincidental, but it was also at the right time. If he hadn't been paying attention to this place, he couldn't have done it so well. "So, Your Highness, where were you just now?" Xiao Wanru pushed Chu Luchen, tried to stay away from him, and looked at him vigilantly. "Where do you think I will be?" Chu Luchen raised the corners of his mouth slightly with a lively smile. However, no matter how lively he was, Xiao Wanru still stared at him angrily, gnashed her teeth and asked, "Your Highness, are you in my courtyard?" Chapter 635. Remember in 1 second, 800 $say, net this is a wonderful free reading without a pop-up window. Of course I'm in your room. Since you've changed beds with me, I also have to rest. Chu Luchen looked at Xiao Wanru and smiled meaningfully. "So, the prince didn't go out at all and just hid in his room?" Xiao Wanru widened her watery eyes and stared at him honestly. She had panicked just now in vain. It turned out that he had been in the yard next to her. He took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. "Your Highness, since it's over, I'll go back." "Why are you in such a hurry? Since you're here, there's no need to go back so early." Chu Luchen looked at her with a smile on his face. His beautiful eyes were full of vigor, but there was a hint of tiredness in them. "It's so inconvenient," Xiao Wanru said unhappily with a straight face. "What inconvenience? Since you've come, why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Chu Luchen said with a smile. Seeing the embarrassment and annoyance in her watery eyes, he stopped while he was ahead. He took out the pair of bracelets from his sleeve and handed one to Xiao Wanru. "Have a look. Do you find anything unusual?" Xiao Wanru had seen this bracelet before. Looking at it again at this time, she found that it was just a puff of smoke. She helplessly took the bracelet that was stuffed into her hand, looked at it, and raised her head to look at Chu Liuchen's beautiful and elegant face in confusion. "Did you find anything unusual?" Chu Luchen asked. Xiao Wanru shook her head. She really didn't find anything. "This king will give this pair of bracelets to you first." Chu Luchen suddenly smiled meaningfully, reached out to put the other bracelet in Xiao Wanru's hand, and said, "It can be used as a last resort." Xiao Wanru blinked her eyes speechlessly. Shouldn't the so-called trump card be used as a dowry when a woman got married? Moreover, it was usually women who added to the dowry. What kind of dowry was this? In the end, Xiao Wanru went back with the pair of bracelets that Chu Luchen had forced on her. She had to take them, so she could only take them. When she went back, she asked Yu Jie to put them away. Such bracelets were not meant to be worn. They were so heavy and solid. Who would wear them? After Xiao Wanru left, Chu Luchen also got up, walked to the window, looked at the mountains outside the window, and asked with a smile, Xiao Xuanzi, what do you think of this bracelet? After Xiao Wanru left, Xiao Xuanzi entered the room. At this time, he hesitated for a moment and said, this bracelet is naturally good, but if it's in the hands of the fifth miss. He felt that it was not appropriate to put it in the hands of the fifth Miss Xiao. If there was any accident, it would really be a big deal. You can't put it in her hands? Chu Luchen squinted at him, his eyes rolling, looking elegant and noble. Master, if someone finds that fifth miss has such a pair of bracelets in her hands, they will be suspicious of her. Xiao Xuanzi cautiously reminded. So? Chu Liuchen's extremely long eyelashes cast uneven shadows on his face. He looked at Xiao Xuanzi and asked with a faint smile. So, Master, you still have to be careful. Xiao Xuanzi said helplessly. He felt that as a servant he had seen it very clearly, but it seemed that his master did not realize it. Of course, I will be careful. She is my princess. If I am not careful, I will even lose my princess. Chu Luchen said casually. If one listened to these words, he would feel that they were very meaningful, as if they were pointing at something. Xiao Xuanzi looked at his master speechlessly and frowned. He felt that he had said it clearly, but his master did not seem to understand it. After thinking for a while, he still felt that he could explain it clearly, so he had to remind him again, Master, if the fifth miss takes part in the consort selection, she may also be chosen by other princes. Fifth Miss Xiao was getting more and more beautiful now. She was no longer the little girl who was full of childishness at that time. She was now even more outstanding than the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion. In Xiao Xuanzi's opinion, the first beauty in the capital city should be the fifth Mississippi. With such an appearance, how could those princes not be moved? Even if they did not necessarily give her a princess, they would naturally be willing to give her a concubine or concubine. How dare they? Chu Liuchen's face turned cold, and there was a trace of malice in his handsome eyes. The gentleness and nobility just now immediately became treacherous and cold. Master, it's not a matter of whether they dare or not. Although the Empress Dowager has agreed to the relationship between you and the fifth miss, it has not been really announced. If the other princes really announce it, it will be too late for you to regret. Xiao Xuanzi said earnestly and secretly wiped his sweat. Chu Liuchen's eyes fell coldly outside the window. Suddenly, he found that the beautiful scenery just now was a little inconspicuous, and even felt a strong disgust. He snorted coldly and said, If anyone dares to think about my woman, he has to see if he has the fate to do so. The gold bracelets. Xiao Xuanzi felt that his master understood and asked again. Put them in Zhuozhua's place first. I'd like to see who dares to think about the gold bracelets. Chu Luchen said. Suddenly he smiled evilly, turned around and patted Xiao Xuanzi's head. Later, go and tell her people that if anyone asks about the gold bracelets, just push them to old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion. Master, why didn't you say it just now? Xiao Xuanzi breathed a sigh of relief and said, Why should I say it? Chu Luchen chuckled. With his eyebrows and eyes relaxed, he looked like a gentle and harmless teenager, but his words didn't sound harmless at all. It's caused by Duke Xing's mansion, so it's better for her not to know. As for whether others thought so or not, it didn't matter. Master, do you mean that it was given to the fifth miss by old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion in private, and the fifth miss didn't like it and didn't see it, so she didn't know it? Xiao Xuanzi's eyes lit up and his face was full of joy. It seemed that his master understood it. He thought that his master didn't understand his feelings for the fifth Miss Xiao. If he accidentally put the fifth Miss Xiao in danger, it would be too late for him to regret it when something really happened. Send 1 or 2 pairs to the other people of Duke Xing's mansion. Chu Luchun said lightly. Yes, master. I'll prepare it now. Xiao Xuanzi nodded repeatedly. It had nothing to do with the 5th miss. Xiao Wanru didn't know these arrangements of Chu Luchun, but the next day, Yu Jie secretly told her that if the bracelets were given by old madam of Duke Xing's mansion, she wouldn't know it if someone asked about it in the future. It was mixed in a pile of gifts and put away by the servant girl. After Xiao Wanru's accident, Duke Xing's mansion sent her a lot of gifts. On the surface, it seemed that they were serious. Xiao Wanru basically didn't look at these gifts and directly put them away. This reason was useful here. There was a pair of gold bracelets on the gift list. If one didn't look at them, no one would notice that this pair of gold bracelets was so different and heavy that they were not good for wearing. Xiao Wanru deliberately took out the pair of gold bracelets again and studied them in the sunlight through the window for a long time. But she still didn't find anything. After that, she asked Yu Jie to put them away and lock them up. Since there was a cause and effect of this matter, and it was Chu Liuchun's idea, it seemed more like a trap. As for whether the people of Duke Xing's mansion were involved in this trap, it was not something she needed to consider. In the last life, she didn't know how Chu Luchun defeated all his opponents and ascended to the position of the crown prince. But one thing was certain. Chu Luchun could sit in this position by using evil means. He had never been a kind person, so the gentle and elegant young master was just a show. For the next period of time, it had been very quiet. No one from Duke Xing's mansion came to disturb them, and even the courtyard next door was very quiet. Chu Luchun seemed to be sincerely recuperating. Yu Jie even saw Mingqiu appear next door from time to time to treat Chu Luchun. People from the Imperial Palace also came and went from time to time. The Empress Dowager's people, the Emperor's people, and the Empress's people seemed to be really concerned about Chu Liuchun's illness. However, even if these people came over, their voices were very low and they didn't make much noise. They all knew that Prince Chen was recuperating, so no one dared to make any noise. Suddenly, one day, someone knocked on the door of Xiao Wanru's courtyard. Yu Jie looked at several palace maids standing outside in surprise and said, "You are, at the Empress Dowager's order, we come to sew clothes for 5th Miss Xiao." The leading palace maid came forward and said with a smile, "Sew clothes for our miss?" Yu Jie didn't know what it meant. After looking them up and down a few times, she repeated and asked, "I heard that 5th Miss Xiao doesn't have any clothes. The Empress Dowager's order is to buy some clothes for 5th Miss Xiao so that she can directly enter the palace for the consort selection." The palace maid said with a smile and a gentle attitude. The fact that the 5th Miss Xiao could get the Empress Dowager's decree showed that the Empress Dowager thought highly of the 5th Miss Xiao. It seemed that the 5th Miss Xiao was very lucky, so the palace maids naturally treated her very kindly. Of course, the most important reason was Ru, and Great Elder Princess. In Great Elder Princess would mention 5th Miss Xiao from time to time when she went in and out of the Empress Dowager's palace. Basically, everyone in the Empress Dowager's palace knew about it. Many people thought that the reason why Ru and Great Elder Princess said so was that she probably wanted 5th Miss Xiao to marry one of the princes. With her identity, she could be the legal wife. However, 5th Miss Xiao seemed to have a high status, but in fact, she didn't have any substantial role. These princes might not like her. However, since Ru and Great Elder Princess said so and did so, even if 5th Miss Xiao couldn't be the legal wife, the royal family would probably give her the position of a concubine. Many people thought so, and the palace maid in front of them naturally couldn't offend 5th Miss Xiao. However, they didn't dare to offend her. They really didn't take 5th Miss Xiao seriously. They just did it for the sake of Ru and Great Elder Princess. However, when they saw 5th Miss Xiao, the palace maid sent by the Empress Dowager no longer dared to look down on 5th Miss Xiao, who was said to be useless. Chapter 636. When the palace maid came in, she first bowed to Xiao Wanru, and then raised her head. When she saw clearly the miss sitting above, she was so amazed that she couldn't even speak. It was widely said in the capital city that the first Miss Xiao was extraordinarily beautiful. This palace maid, who served the Empress Dowager in the palace, had also seen the first Miss Xiao and indeed thought that the first Miss Xiao was extraordinarily beautiful. She had never expected that there would be someone who was even more beautiful than the first Miss Xiao. Although she was only dressed in plain black clothes, she was more beautiful than those gorgeously dressed misses from aristocratic families. Such a simple black robe actually gave her a kind of ethereal beauty that didn't belong to the mortal world. It made her delicate little face look like a fairy from a painting out of this world. "Do you want to have your clothes measured?" Xiao Wanru looked at the palace maid and said with a slight smile. Are you fifth Miss Xiao?" The palace maid hurriedly smiled and hid the shock in her eyes. She looked more respectful. There were all kinds of beauties in the emperor's harem, but none of them could make her as amazed as the fifth Miss Xiao in front of her. "Yes, do you want to have your clothes measured?" Xiao Wanru stood up and said, "Yes, the Empress Dowager means that she knows that the fifth Miss Xiao has been living in nunneries and temples, so there are no suitable clothes with her. The consort selection is about to begin, and the fifth Miss Xiao is a miss on the list. The Empress Dowager orders us to make a few sets of clothes for the fifth Miss Xiao first, in case there are no suitable clothes for her when she enters the palace." The palace maid introduced with a smile, called 2 palace maids who came over to measure the clothes, and stepped forward to measure Xiao Wanru's figure. Then she asked another palace maid to put a few pieces of cloth on the table for Xiao Wanru to choose. Originally, and Great Elder Princess also wanted to choose a few pieces of cloth, but the Empress Dowager said that she could be rewarded together, so that and Great Elder Princess wouldn't have to send more. The palace maid looked smart at first glance. She spoke calmly and solved the problem for and Great Elder Princess. And Great Elder Princess should have been the one to make clothes. However, since the Empress Dowager had given her such a favor, it was okay for her to help her complete a series of things. And Great Elder Princess had always been very dignified in front of the Empress Dowager. This time, the Empress Dowager had always been good to and Great Elder Princess, so it was reasonable for the Empress Dowager to help her granddaughter. She brought a lot of cloth. After Xiao Wanru thanked the palace maid, she came over and picked 4 pieces of cloth. After that, Xiao Wanru came to thank the palace maid. The palace maid looked at her with approval and did not force. She and Dowager. And to say to Xiao, she was. When the beauties entered the palace for the consort selection, they couldn't bring too many clothes. 4 sets was the standard. Of course, if they had the Empress Dowager's permission, they could pick a few more sets. This young and beautiful fifth Miss Xiao was also so calm. She did not become spoiled because of the Empress Dowager's order. She actually picked 4 sets of clothes according to the rules, which really made the palace maids think highly of her. After the clothes, there was a set of jewelry bestowed by the Empress Dowager. It was a very beautiful set of jewelry. After everything was done, the palace maid left with a smile. "Miss, I seem to have seen this set of jewelry somewhere." Yujia looked at the jewelry and said in confusion. The jewelry box on the table was opened. In the exquisite jewelry box, there was the set of jewelry given by the Empress Dowager. It was indeed beautiful. At first glance, one could tell that it was not ordinary. "Where did you see it?" Xiao Wanru asked curiously. The things in the palace were all custom-made. Not everyone could have them. Yujia had lived in the Yuhui nunnery with her for a long time, but she should not have seen many people. "I want to think about it." Yujia closed her eyes and thought about some people she had seen. However, after thinking for a while, she couldn't think of anyone. She could only shake her head helplessly and said, "Miss, I can't think of who it is, but I think I have seen them before." "Have you seen them before? Are they the same or similar?" Xiao Wanru reminded her. She reached out to pick up a hairpin, walked to the dressing table, and inserted it into her reflection in the dressing table. There were a few strings of beads hanging from the hairpin, which made her look more beautiful than a flower. "Miss, I remember. It's the first Miss." Yujia's eyes lit up when she saw the string of beads, and her mind became clear. "Miss, do you remember when the first Miss first came to the Yuhui nunnery and saw you? At that time, the first Miss was wearing such a hairpin. It was an exquisite hairpin. At first glance, it was obvious that it was custom-made in the palace. Duke Xing's mansion has been favored by the emperor many times, and the palace has also rewarded us. It's nothing. Chula came in with tea and heard Yujia's words. She said indifferently. But the two hairpins are the same. Yujia stammered and said anxiously. Many of the jewelry in the palace were custom-made, but because they were custom-made, there were always some differences. There would not be two hairpins that were exactly the same. No matter if they were given as a reward or worn by themselves, they couldn't be the same as others, or they would lose the dignity of the palace. Two hairpins are exactly the same? Xiao Wenru was also a little interested. She reached out and pulled out the hairpin on her head. Different from the simple ones outside, this hairpin was half a fan, which looked more gorgeous than ordinary hairpins. There were strings of beads hanging on one side of the half fan. The strings of beads, which were the size of rice grains, were not big, but were round and plump. On the golden thread, the small white pearls swayed from time to time. If they were inserted into one's hair, they would make one's black hair and face look more charming. This was a very beautiful hairpin. This kind of hairpin would be liked by many women because of its unique appearance. However, this unique appearance would not be the only one made. There should be a few similar ones. Although they could not be exactly the same, making a few similar ones to please the masters in the palace was still very willing. I can't remember. Maybe they are not the same. Yujia was stunned. After thinking for a while, she frowned. Now she couldn't remember whether they were exactly the same. At that time, because the first Mrs. Hairpin was beautiful and different from ordinary hairpins, she took a few more glances at it. After the first Miss prepared to live in the Yuhui nunnery for a long time, she didn't see the first Miss wearing such a hairpin again. Now when she thought about it, her memory was a little vague. She just vaguely felt that such a unique hairpin was different from other hairpins, so she took a few more glances at it. Miss, the first Mrs. Hairpin was also given by the Empress Dowager. Chula guessed. Xiao Wenru smiled slightly and said, "Put away the jewelry first." Since it was given by the Empress Dowager in the name of the consort selection, she could wear this set during the consort selection. As for the fact that the Empress Dowager asked someone to make clothes and give her jewelry, she was very surprised. Wouldn't the Empress Dowager give her clothes and jewelry at this time make people think too much? She had been very low-key, but because of this matter, she would be noticed by many people. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? But no matter whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, since she gradually appeared in front of everyone, she would not let go of such an opportunity. Whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, sometimes a good thing could also become a bad thing, and a bad thing could also be turned into a good thing. Yujia, send the jewelry to Duke Xing's mansion for me later. Tell them that such gorgeous jewelry is not suitable to be kept in the Huaguang Temple on the mountain. I ask you to put it in the courtyard where I live in Duke Xing's mansion. After the incident of the gorgeous clothes, it was reasonable to take this set of jewelry to Duke Xing's mansion now. She should look like a meditator when she cultivated in seclusion and shouldn't wear bright clothes and gorgeous jewelry. When the old maid of Duke Xing's mansion came to invite Xiao Wenru, she had once said that the courtyard could be lived in. At that time, and great elder princess sent Xiao Wenru's servant Nanny Yu there, and also arranged a few people to help her deal with the affairs in the courtyard. After Xiao Wenru went down the mountain, she could directly live in the courtyard. The things in the courtyard were given by Ru, and great elder princess, and prepared by Duke Xing's mansion. Send the jewelry to Madame of Duke Xing first, let her have a look, and then ask Nanny Yu to put it away. Xiao Wenru said in detail with a trace of deepness in her watery eyes. No matter where the similar set of jewelry in Xiao Yenru's hands came from, she would be anxious when she saw this set of jewelry. They were both misses of Duke Xing's mansion. If Xiao Yenru was rewarded to her but not to Xiao Yenru, not only Xiao Yenru would be anxious, but also Madame of Duke Xing would be anxious. The dispute between Xiao Yenru and Qin Yuru had not reached a conclusion until now, which showed that Duke Xing's mansion did not have the upper hand. Mother, why hasn't this matter been solved yet? It is just a small Duke Yong's mansion. Why hasn't it been solved yet? Xiao Yenru said angrily with a pale face. Qin Yuru is pregnant, and Countess Yong refuses to let her go. She said that she will deal with it after she gives birth to the child. With a gloomy face, Madame of Duxing no longer looked dignified and decent in front of others. She patted the table angrily. Speaking of this matter, Madame of Duxing was also very angry. During this period of time, she had been secretly negotiating with Countess Yong in private. As long as Duke Yong's mansion could sacrifice Qin Yuru, the Crown Prince of Duxing could give some great benefits to Duke Yong's mansion. At first, Countess Yong had been delaying it. She said that they would discuss it after going back and put it off again and again. But now, she said that Qin Yuru was pregnant and it was impossible for her to hurt her grandson at this time, so she politely refused Madame of Duxing. "Mother, it is just a small Duke Yong's mansion. Can't we deal with Duke Yong's mansion with the strength of our mansion? If they are unwilling to sacrifice Qin Yuru, we can suppress the whole Duke Yong's mansion. Isn't Duke Yong still father's subordinate?" Xiao Yanru's beautiful face was cold. She suppressed the impatience in her heart and said coldly, "Mother, the Empress Dowager only rewarded Xiao Wanru, but not me. It can be seen that she is not satisfied with me. If I make the Empress Dowager dissatisfied, even if I have a chance in the future, I am afraid that I can't get what I want. At that time, the whole Duke Xing's mansion will be affected." Chapter 637. I know, but your father. Madame of Duxing became more and more annoyed. She raised her eyebrows and said angrily, "Your father also asked me to tell you to behave yourself and don't have anything to do with Commandery Prince Qing. It's unclear." "Bah, when did you get involved with Commandery Prince Qing?" "Mother, when did he say that?" Xiao Yanru was stunned. She didn't expect that there was such a thing. "Mother, why didn't you tell me?" "What's there to say? It's your father's groundless accusations. I know that you met Commandery Prince Qing when you went down the mountain that day. I don't know who gossiped in front of your father, saying that you got involved with Commandery Prince Qing. How could you take a fancy to Commandery Prince Qing?" Madame of Duxing said with a sneer. Hearing Duxing's words at that time, she was so angry that she almost left in a huff. How proud was her daughter? How could she take a fancy to Chu Qing, the son of the former emperor, who had just been recognized? The former emperor had passed away. Even Chu Luqian, the legitimate son of the former emperor, had not been chosen, so how could she take a fancy to Chu Qing? "Mother, did someone say something in front of my father?" Xiao Yanru's face darkened, but she calmed down. I don't know who said it. Your father came to me specially to tell me about it," Madame of Duxing said angrily. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Her daughter was her pride. It was fine if others said it, but how could she not be angry when even Duxing said it? "Mother, since my father said so, it must not be groundless. My reputation has been tarnished now. I have to participate in the consort selection this time. Otherwise, I won't have a chance in the future." Xiao Yanru clenched her hands, stood up, walked around the room twice, and stopped in front of Madame of Duxing. She looked into Madame of Duxing's eyes and said, "Mother, I can't wait any longer." "Who have you chosen?" Madame of Duxing grabbed Xiao Yanru's hand and said in a panic. Whether to choose Chu Luiyue or Chu Liuzhou had always been a result that Duxing's mansion could not reach. In the current situation, it was not the time to see the sun rise after the clouds were dispelled. It was very important to bet on whom to choose. "Mother, I said that I want to attend the consort selection, but I don't mean that I will be selected. My reputation is damaged now, but it has something to do with Xiao Wanru or Qin Yuru. The most important thing is the two of them. Xiao Wanru is still in Huaguang Temple, so it's not convenient for me to look for her for the time being, but I can look for Qin Yuru." Xiao Yanru gnashed her teeth and said, "She originally had a very good reputation. Whenever she was mentioned, everyone would say that not only was she outstanding in appearance, but she was also dignified and decent. She was the model of a young lady from an aristocratic family. But now, when she was mentioned in the capital, it was half praise and half praise. Many women even thought that she was the most scheming and the most vicious one. That day, she asked her servant girl to inquire about it. After getting the news, she was so angry that she smashed all the things in her room. When did her reputation compare with Qin Yuru's? She couldn't wait any longer, but she couldn't make up her mind. Therefore, she could no longer avoid the consort selection for any reason. But attending the consort selection did not mean that she would make a bet. She was optimistic about Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou. She had to wait for a while. She had to attend the consort selection in the Imperial Palace, but no one could blame her for it. She could also blame Xiao Wanru, because Xiao Wanru had damaged her appearance and had to withdraw from the consort selection. No one could blame her for this. She could wait for Xiao Wanru, but she couldn't wait for Qin Yuru. She had to work hard to restore her reputation. Mother, please see Countess Yong again. If she still refuses, tell her about her son and let her understand that even if she wants to protect this daughter-in-law, she can't. Xiao Yanru sneered. About Di Yan's mistress? About the mistress? Madame of Duke Xing hesitated. She also inquired about this matter from Duke Xing, but Duke Xing told her to wait and see first, saying that they would talk about it later and not to make waves for the time being. It would be more useful in the future. Yes, take the mistress as an example. If Qin Yuru knows about the mistress, the entire Duke Yong's mansion will not be peaceful. Xiao Yanru sneered. She didn't believe that she couldn't deal with a woman with a ruined reputation. Mother, if I don't do it, my bad reputation will have a great impact on the future. If she had a bad reputation, even if she entered the Imperial Palace in the future, she couldn't become the empress under the emperor. This was also an important reason why Xiao Yanru tried hard to maintain her image and reputation in front of others. Her reputation could not be blemished. Okay. Madame of Duke Xing thought for a while and finally nodded. This was the only thing she could do now. No matter what she wanted to do with it before, she could only make use of it now. Moreover, if Countess Yong agreed, this matter would not really be exposed. She just reminded Countess Yong that she knew about her son. If this matter was really exposed, it would not be a trivial matter. With old Madame of Duke Yong's protection of Qin Yuru, not only would Di Yan be in trouble, but also Countess Yong would be in trouble. Mother, if Countess Yong agrees, you can ask Countess Yong to hide him first. In this way, you can tell her that Huaguang Temple is not bad. Xiao Yanru smiled sinisterly. It was indeed good to hide among the pilgrims of Huaguang Temple, and she could also shift the blame to others. Wasn't Xiao Wanru on the mountain? As for Qin Yuru, Xiao Yanru felt that she couldn't bear it. According to her opinion of Qin Yuru in the past, if she told Qin Yuru, she would definitely make trouble. But she didn't expect that she had guessed wrong again. Going out from the back door of Xiao Wanru's courtyard, one could enter the back mountain of Huaguang Temple. There was a plum forest at the back mountain, and there was a place in the corner with white plum blossoms. White plum blossoms were different from red plum blossoms, which were like fire. When they bloomed on the snow, the red and white color looked more and more beautiful. When many people went to the back mountain, they went to appreciate the large area of red plum blossoms, but no one paid attention to the white plum blossoms in the corner. Seeing the white plum blossoms in the corner, almost all the pilgrims turned back. The red plum blossoms in the snow had a special charm. If it was just a piece of snow, it would be less interesting after all. Light snowflakes began to fall from the sky. Xiao Wanru didn't wear black clothes. She was dressed very tightly and wrapped in a light purple cloak. Her black hair was tied up with a simple hairpin made of purple bamboo. But even so, her face looked particularly beautiful in the reflection of the white plum forest. Even because of the snowy scene in front of her, she felt like she was in a dream. She walked along the road in the middle of the white plum forest. When she went out, the snowflakes were still very light. Unexpectedly, when she arrived at the back mountain, it was already raining heavily. There was a vast expanse of whiteness in the sky and on the ground, and she could hardly see the road in front of her clearly. Along the way, she didn't see any other pilgrims on the ground. There was almost no one in this white plum forest, let alone in this snowy weather. Miss, let's go down. Although Yu Jie was used to climbing mountains, she couldn't help panting at this time. Looking at the accumulated snow behind her, she persuaded. It's okay. It's not far away. Xiao Wanru shook her head, narrowed her watery eyes, and looked ahead. There were many plum trees in front of her, and with the falling snowflakes, there were not many paths she could see. Recently, Chu Luchan didn't know what was wrong with him. He didn't live in the courtyard at the foot of the mountain, but went to the depths of the white plum forest from time to time and lived there. Moreover, he asked Xiao Wanru to send him lunch. At this time, it was dark, but in fact, it was only noon. "Miss, you can have a rest here and wait for me. I'll bring it here and go down the mountain with you later." Yu Jie put down the food basket in her hand, took a breath, and suggested, "No, it's just a little cold." Xiao Wanru rubbed her hands and said. Fortunately, the cloak was warm. She nestled her hands in it, so she didn't feel so cold. It was much colder here than in Jiangzhou, especially in winter. "Miss, I'll walk faster. Please walk slower." Yu Jie picked up the food basket and said, "There's no hurry. It's rare to enjoy such a scenery. In fact, it's not bad." Xiao Wanru reached out her hand with a smile, and a snowflake fell on her palm with a trace of coldness in winter, but it was so beautiful that she couldn't help showing a smile. She was indeed very cold, but she thought everything in front of her was beautiful. Seeing that her master kept refusing her, Yu Jie could only follow her helplessly. She was still carrying a food basket in her hand, so she couldn't free her hand to hold the umbrella for Xiao Wanru. Her master was still disobedient. The hood of her cloak fell down and covered her head, but she even lifted the hood of her cloak. "Miss, the snow is too heavy. You'd better take off your hood, lest you get hurt." After taking a few steps, Yu Jie said again, "It doesn't matter. I'm in good health." Xiao Wanru said with a smile. She inexplicably recalled what happened when she was in Jiangzhou. She was naughty when she was a child, and there were not so many rules in Jiangzhou. In addition, Madame D intentionally or unintentionally indulged her, so she climbed over walls and trees since she was a child. She followed Qi Baiyu and did such naughty things many times. Now thinking of it, it seemed to be a little far away, as if it had been a lifetime. In fact, it was really a lifetime. After a lifetime, since the day she was reborn, she was no longer the Qin Wanru in the last life. "Miss." Yu Jie wanted to persuade her again, but Xiao Wanru reached out to stop her. Xiao Wanru stood still and frowned slightly. She keenly captured a sound different from the sound of wind and snow. It was the sound of a sword clashing not far ahead. With her face changing slightly, she lowered her voice and said, "There are people in front." And the sound of swords and sabers. There are people in front, and the sound of swords and sabers? Yu Jie trembled with fear and almost dropped the food basket in her hand. "Go down the mountain and ask Qing, or come here." Xiao Wanru looked around and said decisively. She walked slowly and was easy to be discovered, while Yu Jie moved fast and was not easy to be discovered. "Miss, I can't leave you here." Yu Jie was so scared that she was about to cry. She was strong, but it didn't mean that she knew martial arts and had never experienced such a thing. "Go quickly and ask Qing to guard me. You can't help me here, and others will find me." Xiao Wanru reached out to push Yu Jie, took a deep breath, and said. She looked at the road ahead, which was far away and covered with gray. "Go quickly. They are coming here." Chapter 638. Yu Jie had no choice but to leave in a hurry. She knew that she was not only a big target here, but also couldn't help them. After taking Xiao Wanru to hide behind a big plum tree, she ran down the mountain to call for help. In the heavy snow, the sound of swords and sabers colliding was getting closer and closer. Xiao Wanru could vaguely see figures and hear heart-wrenching screams. Xiao Wanru wrapped her clothes tightly and almost shrank into a ball. She looked at the flashing figures without moving at all. Before the matter was clear, she would never act rashly. But she felt inexplicably agitated in her heart. It seemed that in an instant, that place was close to them. A group of guards protected Chu Luchan. Dressed in a snow-white fox fur coat, he stood tall and handsome in the snow. A corner of his purple robe was exposed from time to time under the snow-white fox fur coat, showing a gorgeous style different from the snow. 4 or 5 guards protected him tightly. Opposite him was a large group of black-clothed men, who were masked and dressed in black, but they were particularly obvious in the snow. The guards protected him and retreated step by step from the end of the road. The black-clothed men were approaching, and the guards were fighting with the black-clothed men. Blood was spilled on the snow-white ground, which was dark red and dyed Xiao Wanru's sight red. The plum tree she hid under was very big, occupying more than half of the road, but it was a place where she could attack and retreat. The leader of the guards protected Chu Luchen and turned to the tree. Xiao Wanru hesitated for a moment and dared not to move. "Who is there? Come out." A guard found her huddled up and shouted sternly, pointing the long sword in his hand at her. Xiao Wanru helplessly stood up from behind the tree. She had just hidden for a while, but now her body was stiff and she couldn't stand up for a while. When she was about to take a breath and stand up straight with the support of the plum tree, she fell into a warm embrace. A large fox fur coat wrapped her in it. Her body swayed and she couldn't help hugging the person in front of her. The faint fragrance of medicine was so familiar that she knew who it was without seeing it clearly. "Why are you alone?" The voice in her ears was unkind, accompanied by a sharp scream. "I asked Yujie to go back." Xiao Wanru recovered from the shock, lowered her head and said. Then she raised her head and asked anxiously, "Who sent them?" They were wrapped together and held tightly by Chu Luchen, so she didn't actually see his face. "I don't know." Chu Luchen looked up, still holding Xiao Wanru in his arms. He raised his head and looked at several black-clad men who were attacking the guards fiercely. He slightly raised the corners of his thin lips with an unfathomable smile and turned to those black-clad men without saying a word. The guards rushed forward one by one and fought with the men in black. One of the men in black even broke through the defense line of the guards and rushed to Chu Luchen. Only Chu Luchen held Xiao Wanru in his arms motionlessly and let the sword stab a finger away from him. Then he suddenly pulled out the sword hanging in his fox fur coat with his other hand. The sword flew out and killed in one strike. The blood was spilled on the pure white snow in front of Xiao Wanru. Sensing the movement, Xiao Wanru hurriedly lowered her head and saw the black-clad man's widened eyes almost popping out of his eye sockets through the gap of the fox fur coat. He was unwilling to die. A cold hand covered her eyes, and Chu Liuchen's cold voice sounded in her ears. "Don't look." Xiao Wanru's eyes were covered by the cold hand, and the hand was very cold. Just now, when she was outside the fox fur coat, although she had only caught a glimpse of it and couldn't see it clearly, she knew that this was the hand that had killed the black-clothed man in front of her. However, she wasn't the least bit afraid. Her long eyelashes fluttered in his palm, and she had an inexplicable feeling. Then she subconsciously pulled Chu Liuchen's hand down, tried to look serious and said, "I'm not afraid." In her last life, she seemed to have seen more people lying under the main hall and on the steps of the Imperial Palace. Those beauties and some others were all dead. But she didn't seem to be afraid at all. She just quietly watched the Imperial Palace being bathed in blood, as if everything here was full of hatred for her. Blood poured down from the steps, and the once beautiful girls died on the spot one by one. She looked at it calmly. At that time, was she dead? Was she cut in half at the waist at the bottom of these steps? There was a buzzing sound in her mind. She held Chu Liuchen's hand tightly and stared at the black-clad man's ferocious face before he died. What appeared in her mind were the faces of those beauties, who used to be beautiful but also became ferocious. But she clearly felt that this should have happened before she died. Now why did she feel that it happened after she was cut in half at the waist? She didn't know whether her memory was right or wrong. Her hand trembled slightly involuntarily, and the originally warm hand immediately became cold. She seemed to see a pair of gloomy and desperate eyes in the blood-stained sky, and that pair of eyes actually looked familiar. But why? She didn't know. What's wrong? Don't force yourself. Chu Luchen covered her eyes with his hand again. This time, she didn't shake his hand off. The air was no longer filled with the fresh smell of snow, but with the strong smell of blood. Because she couldn't see, it seemed that the strong smell of blood was also in her breath. It was as strong as the steps and palaces full of beauty she saw. Wasn't it Chu Luchen who bathed in blood in order to ascend to the position of crown prince? If not, why did he bathe in blood in the Imperial Palace? Why did those beauties provoke this devil? She reached out to hold Chu Liuchen's hand, and once again stubbornly pulled his hand down. She held it hard with all her strength, as if this could prove that she was now real and alive, and not the one who was cut in half at the waist at the end of the dream. She breathed hard, and even the air felt suffocated. Her breathing involuntarily became rapid. Chu Liuchen seemed to notice her abnormality. He turned her in another direction with her in his arms, loosened the grip on her waist, and shook his hand to loosen the fox fur coat. He raised her chin with his hand and carefully observed her look. He saw that her lips, which used to be bright, were now pale, almost bloodless, and her watery eyes were dull. He couldn't help frowning, lowered his head, and simply bit her cherry lips hard. Then he let go of her with a little worry in his eyes. The sharp pain made Xiao Wanru wake up. She took Chu Liuchen's hand and breathed hard. Because she breathed too fast, she choked and coughed hard. Chu Liuchen slightly pursed his lips and gently reached out to pat her back a few times. He didn't put down his hand until her face recovered. "What's the matter?" Chu Liuchen raised his eyebrows and asked. I seem to be asleep." Xiao Wanru calmed down and lowered her head. "I told you not to look, but you insisted," Chu Liuchen said unhappily. He reached out to hold her in his arms again. Although he moved quickly, he didn't use as much strength as before. He even loosened the knot around his neck to loosen the collar of the fox fur coat. Xiao Wanru was wrapped in his arms and turned around by him. Although she didn't know what was going on, she knew that there must be an accident, so she should be steady at this time. She smelled the familiar scent of medicine with a trace of warmth, which made her heart, which was full of holes and didn't even know what was right or wrong, inexplicably calm down. She subconsciously held one side of his fox fur coat tightly and quietly listened to the movements outside. The sounds of fighting continued, and it was obvious that the assassination was still going on. "Your Highness, be careful." A scream suddenly came into her ears. Xiao Wanru couldn't see the situation outside, but she could hear it. She took Chu Liuchen's hand and was about to pull him away, but her body was pulled heavily. Then she slipped and fell down. Xiao Wanru almost closed her eyes tightly at once, waiting for the subsequent pain. But when she fell down, she didn't feel any pain. She opened her eyes and stretched her hands to the side, only to find that Chu Liuchen was under her. At this time, Prince Chen's face was ashen and his lips were pale. He passed out without saying a word. "Save His Highness. Hurry up, protect His Highness." Someone screamed and someone panicked. Xiao Wanru also panicked. She hurriedly reached out to get off Chu Liuchen's body and picked him up. However, his face was ashen and the corners of his lips were stained with blood. He spat a mouthful of blood all over her body, which was dark red and had a strong smell of blood. This blood was not ordinary blood. She touched Chu Liuchen's face with her trembling hand, and reached out to touch Chu Liuchen's hand with the other hand to feel his pulse. His Highness is here. Hurry up. Come on, he's here." More guards rushed over from nowhere. Some came to help Chu Liuchen, some went to block the black-clad men, and some hurriedly broke plum branches to make a stretcher. Xiao Wanru was pushed 3 feet away from the crowd. Fortunately, when the black-clad men saw so many guards appear, they knew that something was wrong. They turned around and ran away one by one. However, it was too late. Only 2 or 3 of them could run away, and the rest of them were all killed here. The ground was covered with black-clad men, and the snow had been dyed red with blood. "Hurry up, send His Highness to the Imperial Palace. Hurry up." The guards hurriedly dealt with Chu Liuchen's affairs. Xiao Wanru's eyes fell on Chu Liuchen from a distance. There were so many people and they were far away, so she couldn't see his face clearly. She didn't know how he was doing. She couldn't help frowning tightly. Miss. Ching Er's voice came from behind. Ching Er appeared on the path in a panic. Seeing Xiao Wanru standing at the intersection, she breathed a sigh of relief. Glancing at Chu Liuchen among the guards, she was immediately startled and rushed to Xiao Wanru's side. "Miss, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Xiao Wanru shook her head and looked at Chu Liuchen, who was lying on a simple stretcher and being carried out by several guards in a hurry. She frowned more tightly and a trace of doubt flashed in her watery eyes. He spat out dirty blood just now. What did it mean? Chapter 639. With such doubts, Xiao Wenru followed Qing back to her courtyard. The courtyard next to her was in a mess. Chu Luqian did not stay in Huaguang Temple. Escorted by the monks of Huaguang Temple, they rushed down the mountain. Then he was directly escorted into Prince Chen's mansion. Empress Dowager had already received the news. She sneaked into Prince Chen's mansion from the small door with a few trusted subordinates. When Chu Luqian was lifted up and saw the dark blood on his pale lips, she felt weak and almost fell down. After she choked and shouted twice, her face was as pale as snow, and her body was about to fall. Nanny Wei hurriedly reached out to hold her and comforted her. Empress Dowager, let's go to the outer room to have a rest. Prince Chen is blessed by God. He will be fine. Qi Ju was called in a hurry. He ran over, sweating profusely. After bowing deeply to the Empress Dowager at the door, he immediately entered the room. Chen has become like this, but he still can't tolerate him. He has done it again and again. Empress Dowager held Nanny Wei's hand and stabilized her body. Her face was flushed with anger. Empress Dowager, don't worry. Let's go in and have a rest first. Nanny Wei comforted the Empress Dowager calmly, and then helped old madam to the outer room with another palace made beside her. Sitting in the outer room, they could hear the messy sounds inside, which were a little panicked and a little hurried. Someone ran out and rushed out. As soon as he ran to the courtyard, he immediately asked someone to open the warehouse and said that he wanted to take some medicine. Then someone came out with a basin of blood. The dark blood looked frightening. The Empress Dowager suddenly stood up. Because she stood up too fast, her body shook and she almost fell down. Nanny Wei quickly held her and said, Empress Dowager, don't worry. Prince Chen will be fine. Don't worry. He has such a broken body. Who can he threaten? If we say that the people who have wronged him the most are me and the Emperor. After Empress Dowager sat down, she took Nanny Wei's hand and cried uncontrollably. Empress Dowager, it's not your fault. You had no choice. In that case. Nanny Wei lowered her voice and tried to persuade her. Of course, she didn't dare to mention the Emperor casually. Empress Dowager turned her head back with difficulty. When she saw another person coming out with a basin of blood, she almost collapsed. Although she knew that Chu Luqian was in poor health, she had never looked directly at the basin of blood, which belonged to her most beloved grandson. Investigate. We must find out who did this to Chen. It's too much to do this to Chen again and again. The flush on Empress Dowager's face was replaced by a chilly coldness. She gritted her teeth and said with hatred, I just want to treat him better. Who is in the way? Even he can't be tolerated. Empress Dowager put her trembling fingers on the corner of the table and slowly clenched them into fists. Empress Dowager, if you don't dote on Prince Chen so much, it may be better. Nanny Wei sighed softly and whispered. She was the Empress Dowager's confidant and had accompanied the Empress Dowager into the palace. After so many years, the master and servant had experienced many ups and downs. There were some things that other people didn't dare to say, but she dared to appropriately remind them. Just because I dote on Chen? But in addition to my love, what else does Chen have? In fact, it was originally Chen. They fought with each other and didn't forget Chen's life. If at that time, now it is Chen who is sitting in the high position. Empress Dowager, please be careful with your words. Nanny Wei was so anxious that her forehead was full of sweat. She hurriedly interrupted Empress Dowager. Although it was Empress Dowager who said this, the person who heard it was also guilty. At this time, there were many people in Prince Chen's inner chamber. If they heard something and spread it out, it would be a big deal. Empress Dowager also knew that she had said something indiscreet. She clenched her fists hard and sat with a gloomy face. The outer room became strangely quiet. Suddenly hearing Chu Luqian's painful cry inside, Empress Dowager suddenly stood up and almost lost control and wanted to rush in, but she was held tightly by Nanny Wei. Empress Dowager, calm down. You can't go in at this time. Chen is crying in pain. He has always been able to bear it. When he was a child, he had endured so much pain, but now, he is crying in pain. Empress Dowager's whole body was trembling, and her eyes were red. Empress Dowager, don't worry. If you go in at this time, not only will it not help, but you will also delay the things inside. And Prince Chen definitely doesn't want to see you like this. You are his most loving grandmother. For him, you are also his most beloved grandmother. If he sees you like this, Prince Chen will be sad. Nanny Wei was afraid that she couldn't persuade Empress Dowager, so she directly talked about Chu Luchen. Empress Dowager trembled all over, but she didn't act impulsively anymore. She held the table and slowly sat down. Then, from time to time, there came a painful sound. That kind of suppressed sound made Empress Dowager feel more distressed than directly shouting. Almost every time Chu Luchen suppressed a muffled groan, Empress Dowager's whole body became tense. Empress Dowager, who felt the same, was almost suffering, and the look on her face was getting worse and worse. Nanny Wei was worried that Empress Dowager would not be able to help fainting, so she had been paying close attention to Empress Dowager. Another blood-curdling scream was heard. Vieira is fine this time. I will definitely satisfy him. Gritting her teeth, this sentence blurted out. Empress Dowager. Nanny Wei looked at Empress Dowager in horror and said, she really blurted out this sentence, but when she said it, Empress Dowager seemed to be suddenly enlightened and frowned tightly. If Chin'er can recover, even if I help him, it doesn't matter. Originally, it is his. No matter from which side, it is his. Chin'er is the most suitable one, Empress Dowager. Well, stop talking. Let me be quiet for a while. Empress Dowager shook her head tiredly and said bitterly. Even she didn't quite believe what she said. Would he really recover? As long as he could stay alive, it would be good. How could he really be fine? The outer room became quiet again. Time passed slowly, almost little by little. Empress Dowager stood up and sat down, and then stood up again. She was restless. Nanny Wei stood aside and didn't try to persuade her again. Empress Dowager had always been the most stable. Even when there was a change in the palace, Empress Dowager was not so flustered. But now her heart was really in a mess. Finally, the sound inside softened, and Chu Luchen stopped making any sound. They left one by one, and finally Chi-Ju came out. Seeing Chi-Ju coming out, Nanny Wei hurriedly called him Dr. Chi. Chi-Ju was a doctor found by Chu Luchen himself. His medical skills were very good, even better than the imperial physicians in the palace in some aspects. Empress Dowager would also ask him to treat some diseases. However, he was unwilling to enter the palace to be an imperial physician. He felt that Prince Chen's mansion was more leisurely, so he became an idler in Prince Chen's mansion, mainly to treat and nurse Chu Liuchen's body. Chi-Ju came over and bowed to Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager's eyes fell on Chi-Ju's cuff. It seemed that it had been rolled up and was very wrinkled. There was a large area of blood on it, which was shocking. How is Chin? Empress Dowager's voice was a little hoarse. We will have to see if your highness can endure it. Chi-Ju shook his head and said, are you not sure? Empress Dowager did not blame Chi-Ju and asked again. If your highness can wake up within these 3 days, it will be fine. But if your highness, you may not be able to wake up this time. Chi-Ju told the truth with a heavy expression. But why is it dark? The Empress Dowager's eyes were dull, and she didn't seem to be in good spirits. After she asked the question, she was on the verge of collapsing. His Highness has been wounded before. Although the blood was poisoned, it was not a problem. Chi-Ju said. He had been treating Chu Liuchen's illness, so how could he not know the truth of Chu Liuchen's body? Will it really be cured? The Empress Dowager was eager. He looked at Chi-Ju. Chi-Ju shook his head, looked at the Empress Dowager's eyes that were filled with desire, and sighed. Your Highness has been poisoned for a long time, and it was planted when you were young. Even if you spit out some now, it must have been a long time. Moreover, I don't know if your Highness can survive this time. I know. You can leave. The Empress Dowager's face suddenly became gray, and she said slowly after a long time. After Qiju bowed deeply to the Empress Dowager, he slowly left. When he reached the door, he looked into the room again, shook his head, and left with his hands clasped behind his back. The room suddenly became quiet again, and the quiet atmosphere was strange and deep. After a long time, the Empress Dowager said to Nanny Wei, "Help me to go in and see Chen." Nanny Wei answered, reached out to help the Empress Dowager's slightly stiff body, and walked carefully into the inner room. Xiao Xuanzi was guarding inside the inner room. Hearing the sound at the door, he hurried over to help Nanny Wei to help the Empress Dowager enter the inner room. There was a strong smell of blood in the room, and Chu Luchen was lying there with a pale face on the bed. It seemed that even his breath could not be felt. The Empress Dowager staggered and almost fell down. She reached out to the bed. Nanny Wei and Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly helped her to the bed, and helped her to sit down when they reached the bed. Looking at Chu Luchen on the bed without a trace of blood, the Empress Dowager's eyes became red again, and tears fell down one by one. She pinched the corners of her eyes with a handkerchief, but did not make any sound, for fear of disturbing Chu Luchen. After looking at him for a long time, she reached out and touched his face. Feeling the faint temperature, she breathed a sigh of relief. Then she motioned Nanny Wei to help her up, and Xiao Xuanzi helped her on the other side. When they were in the outer room, the Empress Dowager said to Xiao Xuanzi, "Go back and take good care of your master. If your master wakes up, you will be rewarded heavily. If he doesn't wake up, you don't have to serve him anymore." "Yes, yes, I will serve my master now." Xiao Xuanzi was so scared that he knelt down and said repeatedly. Chapter 640. After returning from Prince Chen's mansion, the Empress Dowager first went to the Emperor's Imperial study. The most distinguished mother and son in the country drove everyone else out of the Imperial study. After talking for a long time, the Empress Dowager left the Emperor's Imperial study with a heavy face. After returning to the Palace of Benevolent Peace, she immediately sent people to reward many precious medicinal materials to Prince Chen's mansion. As soon as the Empress Dowager rewarded them, the Emperor immediately rewarded them. The Empress's reward was not much later than theirs. As for the others, although they were not qualified, they all looked very sad. No one in the entire palace laughed wantonly. At this time, everyone knew that the Emperor was in a bad mood, and no one dared to offend him at this time. A palace maid quietly came to the Imperial study and handed a letter to the Emperor. After reading it, the Emperor was speechless for a long time, but then he went out from the back door of the Imperial study with his trusted subordinates and turned to a remote palace. There were 2 guards guarding the door. When they saw the Emperor coming, they respectfully saluted and stood aside. The Emperor walked in. The tall palace seemed very deserted. It was almost the same as the cold palace, but who would have thought that the one living here was not a demoted, but the once favored concubine Lan? It was said that she used to be the most favored, but somehow annoyed the Emperor, and then she was guarded by the Emperor. Even the Empress could not enter here at will. Few people knew that others were not allowed to enter here, but people inside were not forbidden to go out. In the bedchamber, a beautiful woman with long hair was wearing a simple plain dress, which made her more charming and moving. Even though her eyes were red and swollen, she still made people feel sorry for her. "Your Majesty, I want to see Chen." Oh. Hearing the sound at the door, the woman sitting on the couch immediately raised her head and said excitedly with tears on her face. The Emperor came over and sat on the couch. He reached out to pull her, but she shook his hand off. "Your Majesty, I want to see Chen." "How is Chen? Is he all right?" The Emperor's voice was hoarse. "I want to see Chen. I want to see Chen. Why did you stop me? You said that you wouldn't stop me." The woman cried, raised her red and swollen eyes, and cried. The Emperor reached out and rubbed his brows. "It's not a good time now. There are many people watching him." Now almost everyone was staring at Prince Chen's mansion. If someone noticed something, it would be a big deal. "That's my Chen. I want to see him, I want to see him," the woman said stubbornly. She had never been so stubborn before. Tears rolled down her snow-white cheeks. The emperor sighed softly and reached out to hold her in his arms. Don't worry, Zhen will try my best to cure him. I will never let anything happen to him. What if there's something wrong? The woman's voice was muffled and cold in his arms. The emperor slowly pushed her away and looked at her with tears and cold eyes. Such a woman should have been weak, but at this moment, she was strangely determined, just like the charming girl many years ago. She was also so determined. If there's something wrong, I want to find the culprit, and I want to cut the culprit into pieces. The woman gritted her teeth and let her tears fall from the corners of her mouth. She was full of bitterness. Maybe she was really wrong. Originally, she thought that by hiding in a corner, she could let Qin live safely and no one would be afraid of him. It was not bad to be an idle king for a lifetime, but now she found that she was wrong. Others had never intended to let Qin go. They had never intended to spare his life. It was like this at the beginning and it was still like this now. Don't worry, it will be fine. The emperor sighed, and his heart was so heavy that he could hardly breathe. Your Majesty, you have told me several times. But what about the fact? Who would be able to tolerate him, wouldn't they? The woman curled her lips contemptuously, and her voice was so low that she was almost talking to herself, but it made the emperor feel ashamed. The emperor reached out to touch the woman's black hair, and his voice was almost soft. Don't worry, Qin will be fine. These words were not only a guarantee for the woman, but also for himself. Your Majesty, if Qin really has an accident this time, I will make those people pay with their lives. At that time, don't use other things as excuses. If Qin is fine, then it's fine. The woman's voice was sad and even desperate. She stared at the emperor closely, and her tears were still falling. She almost choked with sobs, but she still insisted on speaking, and even didn't know that her words were a little crazy. Well, don't worry. I will promise you. It's okay, it will be okay. The emperor comforted her and reached out to hold the woman tightly. The woman lowered her head and leaned on the emperor's knee weakly. Her voice was filled with a trace of pain and despair. Your Majesty, I only have Qin now, only Qin. The painful struggle made the emperor feel a little more painful. He reached out to touch her head and comforted her. It's okay. You still have me, you still have me. It was no longer the high and mighty I, but just I, which showed the difference between the person in front of him and him. The woman didn't speak this time. She just held the emperor's leg tightly and cried in a low and painful voice. The whole capital city, including the area around Huaguang Temple, was also strictly guarded. Fifth Miss Xiao, who had seen this scene at that time and pushed Chu Luqin at the critical moment so that he could avoid the last sword, made the greatest contribution. According to the guard at that time, fortunately, Fifth Miss Xiao was there, and the sword almost stabbed Chu Luqin. If so, Chu Luqin would definitely be killed with one blow. In this way, Xiao Wanru was Chu Liuqin's savior. Now, she was sitting in the Empress Dowager's palace of benevolent peace, waiting for the Empress Dowager to summon her. How did she inexplicably become Chu Liuqin's savior? Xiao Wanru still felt confused. In fact, she didn't do anything at that time. She slipped, fell out, and then fell heavily on Chu Luqin. Chu Luqin fainted from the fall, but she was fine. Outside the hall, a eunuch screamed, "The Empress Dowager is here." Xiao Wanru hurriedly stood up and respectfully knelt down to the Empress Dowager, who was walking over from a distance. The Empress Dowager came close and looked down at Xiao Wanru. Then she said softly, "Get up. Give her a seat." A palace maid came over to help Xiao Wanru sit down on a stool on one side, and then stepped back to stand behind her. The Empress Dowager also sat down on a chair and looked at Xiao Wanru carefully. She hadn't seen Xiao Wanru for 3 years. At this time, when she saw her again, she found that the little girl had grown into a beautiful girl. Her face was elegant and cold. Even though there was some charm in the corners of her eyes, she became much more dignified because of her elegance. The Empress Dowager looked at her and nodded repeatedly. She secretly breathed a sigh of relief. When she arranged for Chu Luqin to marry Xiao Wanru, the Empress Dowager actually didn't take it too seriously. She just wanted to make Chu Luqin satisfied. Since this matter was not publicized at that time, Few people knew about it. If something really happened in the future, it didn't matter. Chu Luchen was not old at that time, and his temper was not stable. Who knew when he would want to marry another woman? The Empress Dowager thought that the statement at that time was just to satisfy a wish of the childish Chu Luchen. Since he was childish, she didn't know when he fell in love with another woman. However, after such an accident, the Empress Dowager felt very satisfied when she saw Xiao Wanru's appearance in front of her. Of course, she was most satisfied that Xiao Wanru rushed to save Chu Luchen regardless of her own safety. This was what the Empress Dowager liked and appreciated most. For the Empress Dowager, appearance was the icing on the cake. Of course, this intention was the most important. I heard that you rushed to save Chen at that time. I am really grateful. The Empress Dowager said slowly. Empress Dowager, this is what I should do. Xiao Wanru lowered her head and pinched the handkerchief in her hand. She inexplicably became her savior, and she couldn't refuse her savior. She had to accept it even if she didn't want to. You are a good child. In the future, you will be with Chen, and I will be relieved. The Empress Dowager sighed and her heart became more and more soft. This child didn't fight for anything and seemed to have a plain temperament. She was really a good child. Suddenly thinking of the implicit words said by old Madame of Duke Xing in front of her, she couldn't help frowning and felt that old Madame of Duke Xing was too partial. How could such a good girl become like that when it came to her mouth? It was really unbecoming of her. In the words of old Madame of Duke Xing, she was dissatisfied with Xiao Wanru. She repeatedly said that this child was not filial. She deliberately fought with others and caused so many accidents. She deliberately made a small matter into a big matter. She was really not a magnanimous woman. She really came from a small place. Old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion said a lot of bad things about Xiao Wanru in front of the Empress Dowager. Although she said it very implicitly, the Empress Dowager was very smart. How could she not hear the strong displeasure in old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion's words? After hearing old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion's words, the Empress Dowager also felt that Xiao Wanru was probably not a good match for her grandson, and she had doubts in her heart. But now her doubts disappeared and she felt that old Madame's words were not true. The original good girl became bad because of her partiality, and conversely, the original bad girl became good because of her partiality. Thinking of the recent rumors about the first Miss Xiao of Duke Xing's mansion, she really didn't seem to be a good miss from an aristocratic family. Instead, she seemed to be a vicious and dignified person. It was better not to marry such a woman into the royal family. A few days ago, Concubine De even asked her about her, which meant that she liked her. That couldn't be allowed. In the past, these things had little to do with the Empress Dowager, but this time, the Empress Dowager felt that she had to support Xiao Wanru. Even for the sake of her grandson, she had to support Xiao Wanru. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.